The agenda said lunch went to 1 o'clock.
Oh, is it working lunch though?
All right.
So noted.
See, we've lost all our participants because it kicked them off, so I'm sure they'll be able to jump back on. Oh, it's up here, Dave. You're gonna have to run it off this computer. So we are gonna move into capital projects. And I think the important thing to remember on capital projects is, and don't take it the wrong way, but we're really talking about year 5, year 6, right? Not saying that the stuff that's in these first few years is locked in stone, but the idea is that as part of this, we're trying to talk about where do we want to be in that 5-year, that long-term range, and then we can move back. And so Dave and Jamie especially or those two together, have really gone through and just made a significant amount of effort into these next 4 years that we don't want to undermine unless we need to. And so we're really going to be talking about that fiscal year 31, but we will do a little bit of update on that. Oh, wrong mess.
Not coming for that today?
She's only going to be on Zoom. And so I just need to make sure we're sharing the screen so people can see what we're looking at. And then try and hide this window so that it'll stay out of the way.
Yeah, so just like John spoke about, it's taken a lot of work and a lot of people to start working on this. So every first Wednesday of the month, we get the whole group around the table from all the department heads, water, sewer, storm, streets, parks, and we try to help keep this thing updated and making sure that we're trying to capture everything that we're doing as far as capital goes. So yeah, like I said, once a month we're doing all of that. And so here is kind of what we have built. This is the CIP, which is your capital. This is all your, or not the enterprise funds, so your general funds. You can see where we had, we left these ones on here to show you, some of the things we've worked on. There's a few still that we still need to do. For instance, the McGriff Trail connection, that'll be on the east side of the track, tying the trail system down to the park playground. That's still on there. The Waterworks Park, it's all the way out to bit. We have a contractor, everything lined up there, and most of the work will actually be done in the spring, but they've actually contacted us. They're going to start removing fence, start doing some of the grading stuff that they feel like they could do between now and when we start seeing snow fly, that won't cause too big of a disturbance. So you'll start to see them moving over there a little bit. Obviously this year we had one playground on there, which will be Orton Park. So that playground will be the one that'll be redone and redesigned there. Down to the trails, so all the tracks, which is Orton and Griff, will both get their tracks redone. That's something that hasn't happened in 20 years. So we'll be getting those 2 tracks redone this year. And then this 240 is kind of all encompassing. You can see that it's our landscaping, our fencing, field, we typically don't put this amount of money in here, but it was one of those things because we had so much damage to some of our fields with the flooding the last couple years. We've had to try to inject some of the money to try to get some of these fields backing up and going. And they've done a really good job as far as, and then there was some Bowery cleanup stuff that we needed to do, repairs, roofs, those kind of things And so, and then there was some restroom stuff. So this is typically not that big of a number, but this year is one of those things we felt like we could interject some funds into it and get a lot of things caught back up. You can see into 26, 27. So you can see all the parks are kind of lined out here, right? This is where you're seeing the money for the parks. And then the only other big ticket item next year is that redoing all of our parking lots. And that's because we never had a plan for parking lots. And so that's why you see one big number. Going forward, what we want to do is use this 5-year plan to spread those parking lots out. But because we never had a plan before, now most of our parking lots at our parks are in some dire need of some major repairs. We either have, big potholes, we have soft spots, different things like that. So being able to get those caught up and get that started over so that we can spread this out in a 5-year plan like we've done right here. And they'll look a lot like your playgrounds do, in the fact that you'll see probably 1 or 2 parking lots done a year, and we'll spread those out. This is our citywide stuff. Again, you can see the funds for the pond there this year, the ramp. This is our ramp match for the aquatic center. You can see where we put some money into to finish up the parking lot. It was mostly rollover money that we still hadn't got done, or we hadn't finished by July 1. So we had to inject some money to show that this was more of a financing thing. Senior center parking lot, same exact thing. This is the design portion of phase 2. So we are getting into where we're really close to doing phase 2. All of you get from what is that, 2900 north, all the way through the light on 3100, and which means that we'll be taking those houses down, doing all that widening on the west side of the street. So the money that's in there right now is just that the design money to get all that going.
So
Again,
the senior center and parking lot and stuff like that, that's money from 2024.
most of it was, we were about 80% done
Okay.
with most of those projects, and it was just wrapping up project or money. And so we had put this on here as like placeholders to make sure that we knew
Okay.
that what they were crossing fiscal years.
Dave, is that, can you go up to the community pond?
Yeah, I was gonna say, does that push?
Is that 2 million gross, or is that net of the money we're getting?
That would be a cheap.
We started that out with city putting in 1.2 million max. Are we up to 2 million now?
This is just tracking the expense. It's not showing the money going into capital projects from the other sources.
Yeah, but here's my question. We were at 1.2 million before we had the $746,000 from the ramp grant. Because that wasn't included in the original budget. We just said everybody else is getting money for their parks. So the total budget was 1.2 million.
For the community pond.
How to get to 2 million?
We'd have to talk to Jamie about that one. I don't know that, why we, and I don't know if that was just a placeholder, I'd have to ask Jamie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because I think, that's something, because that community pond is actually a bigger issue when it comes to commercial development. And John and myself went with Johnny Hanson the other day, and there's some things we've got to do basically apparently now that we've committed to. like
Yeah,
the
upsizing.
the lines and stuff
storyline,
about
Yeah,
80 to 100 grand.
Yeah.
But also at WACOG, we were just granted $1.2 million for right-of-way acquisition along Mountain Road, but we gotta
Correct.
put in 120.
correct.
We're gonna match that 10. Where does that show up on here?
It is not on here. I just told Jamie about it yesterday. that we were approved for that. So we
But
haven't
I
put it
think
on there yet.
the council needs to really, you can see that, that's a large expenditure, the community pond.
Yes,
And that entails what kind of park we're gonna do there. Because I remember this, it was before we got the 750,000 from the county, which we may or may not get depending on timing.
yeah,
We're hoping we can extend it, but that budget was like 1.2 million.
correct. And, but that was also in one, or what, 2017?
Yeah. But that doesn't mean we're gonna do the same kind of park we were thinking about in
Correct,
2017.
100%.
You know, putting $2 million into it.
Yeah,
If I remember my conversation from Jamie, this was the original placeholder and we have not given her the updated numbers from our conversations with Eric.
and I
yet.
think that's exactly, I really do. I think that more than anything, it was a placeholder to, because we didn't know where we were gonna land and
But
what.
we do need to affect that because the placeholder can become the budget, right? And then we
For
build-
sure.
Then we build to the budget.
Correct. And yeah, and I guess that's what I should say in this, that when we're looking at this, there are some things that are placeholders. I mean, for instance, the playground's another good option, right, or a good example. When you're looking up here, you see just 200,000 across the
Right, we
board.
don't know exactly.
They're always different, right? Like the last one that we're getting ready to do, I think ended up at 130,000 that we're looking at. And so for us, long range planning, we kind of do have some placeholders, but we understand that like when we go to budget, like we are going to get more realistic numbers and then we can update this as we go there.
Because one of the biggest things, and John can correct me, if we want to push commercial development along on a timely basis down there in 2,700,
Correct.
we may have to move that pond by ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's gonna be a real possibility.
Which is a big number, right?
Correct.
But the council needs to look at that and say, what's the goal on commercial development and what are they willing to budget and spend on that? And when, because that's, I appreciate John's enthusiasm about getting money from the federal government eventually. I don't think we can plan on it.
No,
It'd be nice if we get it. But, we're talking about, what is it, John, 3.8, 4.2 million?
Yeah.
So,
Getting that, or that's the total project?
That's the total project
With park.
with stormwater, park, those two things together. If we have to do it on ourselves, then, yeah.
So this 2 million that you have in there doesn't include the federal money.
Correct. It does not
No,
include
it
the federal money.
Mhm.
and it doesn't include stormwater's portion either, right?
Correct.
So this is just what would come out of the general fund.
Okay. Mhm. And if we did it ourselves, would that save money or cost more to make it?
or we're saying the Pine View's kind of bailed out, at least for the first 20 years.
So it's not that how we built it would change. We wouldn't construct it ourselves. It's just we would pay for the entire thing by
I see,
ourselves,
I see.
with the exception of the ramp money. And we think the county stormwater wants to participate too. So if we have to fund it with the city, we still have a few other sources.
Mhm. But we are, sorry, I was just gonna say, we are in a timeline.
If we want commercial development,
Yeah, and we're up against that. We've already got an extension from ramps, and so we need to start moving on that portion of it
Yeah.
too.
Or we lose that.
but yeah, my point was that if that 2 million's compared to 500,000. Because we were 1.2 or 1.3 million. Then we got a grant for 750,
Understood.
so,
And I don't think that is
yeah, I just,
acknowledging the grant at all. So we could actually change that quite a bit.
yeah.
Because I know what you're saying. We could almost back that off to a 500,000 from what you're saying, because.
Yeah, well, I just think that's the discussion that the council ultimately needs to have. Because it's tied into commercial development in the city and what are we willing, to do? And what risk are we willing to take?
Did we find out whether Pine View is actually even gonna be participating on that at all? Are they gonna be wanting that?
If we want to wait.
But that'll be a discussion we can have with the project. They are in to a certain point. They're not sure about construction. That sounds funny, but they want a design that works, but they're not sure when they would be participating in the construction component.
If they won't pay us the 52,000, they owe us for design already.
That's, yeah, right, that's
So they're
something.
in, but we don't know what that means.
Yeah, correct.
But the conversation John and myself had with them was, we never needed it, we never will.
Correct.
So in other words, we're not gonna get back 52,000 and we're gonna do this on our own?
Well, we're gonna send Dave out to collect it, so I think we're gonna get
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay.
Go Dave.
I got my briefcase, but let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Him and Guido will get the
That's
money.
right, we'll go.
So do we move forward realizing that we're probably just gonna have to take that in the shorts?
That's gonna be one of the discussions we'll have in the council when we make a decision on it. You know, with this, we're kind of looking at the overview of the next 5 years.
But to me, I don't think you can look at the overview for next 5 years without having a strategy or a goal. Because if the council decides that we want to lighten the burden on residents' property tax and get some more business into the city, that's gonna cost some money, right?
Correct.
So that could hamper looking out further. So I do think there's a connection, and I do think that needs to be part of this discussion today. Because it's really a philosophy or a goal or a theory. I mean, I don't think you can just get in council meeting and start talking about it.
Well, so I pulled up the budget and the $2 million is what was approved in the budget. And so that's why Jamie's left it in the sheet, is that's what's in the budget. The council hasn't approved a contract or the expenditure of those funds yet, but that's what shows up in the budget right now.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure the council knew what they were approving. Don't take that wrong. Because all of a sudden, it went from an equivalent of 500,000 to 2 million.
Well, yeah, you're right. Well, what I'm saying is that
Well,
the placeholder was put in the budget before all these other conversations happened. And so that's why on capital projects, before we ever go into contract on anything, the council always sees the plan, sees the amount, and then approves it. So you're right, Mayor, that it is not gonna be $2 million.
Yeah.
It will not. I mean, sorry. It, you
it
never know,
itself-
right?
This in itself won't
Meaning-
be 2 million, but we're facing a decision on 4.2 million. When to move and how to do that.
Well, do we know the real number? That's the key thing.
No.
Yeah,
We've
so,
got the best estimate from our engineer. We've got an estimate from our engineer, but we haven't bid it out.
Yeah.
So we do have an estimate, isn't that correct, John?
Yes,
That's correct.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been bid out, but we do have the engineers, estimate of that.
And we already have the commercial interest that we'll lose if we take too long.
the ground is under contract already. So that we signed a contract 3 years ago to sell the old basin property for close to $3 million.
Mhm. And what's the timeline there?
That's another unknown.
Okay,
We have let them know they need to give us 12 to 18 months notice of moving the pond when they need the ground live. And set certain requirements on them that we want some assurances before we pull the trigger on that.
right.
Because if they were gonna close and give us the $3 million tomorrow, then we could move the pond, but they're also waiting for users that have signed on the dotted line too.
Mhm.
So it's just a
it's a
Yeah, but they're
domino.
anxious to get that moved. Because they can't,
Promise anything.
depending on what they're gonna have sitting on that pond, it has a lot to do with the entire development of the deal there.
Yeah.
So the most recent discussion, I just think this ties into, because capital projects are where most of our money's gonna be laid out.
Correct.
But I just told them, you need to give us a date when we need to deliver that piece of ground to you. And the risk we talked about is, do we want to spend $4 million and take a risk? Is the property gonna close? Is retail really gonna come in there? And I had this discussion with John and Dave the other day. One thing that might be helpful is the individual that is developing that and has the contract on buying the ground, also has an excavation company. And he said, you know, I'll excavate the pond area for you, which kind of commits him, right? And reduces our out-of-pocket potential money. But, you know, and we've got the 3 million on there, I think. That's a gross number. That's no, that's a net number, isn't it, on the extension of 2,600?
Yes.
But as John can tell you, even if we don't move that pond and we don't move it soon, we've got some commitments, right? We're gonna have to lay some money out. Probably 75 to 100 grand on that sewer. Is that about where we're at, John?
Yeah,
On
the
the storm
storm, yeah,
drain?
On
yeah.
the storm?
Yeah.
But the big expenditure, the big decision I think the council has to make is how much risk are they willing to take and how much money you put out to get that pond moved? And when are they gonna do that? Cause that's a lot of money, right? We're not gonna, like John said, we don't wanna expend a bunch of money until we get some return on. Cause the last thing we wanna do is spend a bunch of money, then have that ground sit there vacant with no property tax or sales tax being generated.
And then that's the biggest thing, right? Like, we don't wanna go spend $4 million, move it over there, and then that's sit vacant for 2 years, well then, then why did we go spend it?
You know,
When
I
we
don't
could have
know.
done it with a partnership with somebody else, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if we can move the detention basin and then subsequently do the park, or we have to do it all, you know, I'm not. But it's a lot of money. It's,
If we were able to do some in fiscal year 2025 and some in fiscal year 2026, that wouldn't even help because we're moving 400 and that costs 3 million, is that right?
Well, yeah, cause 26 is in the same year, yeah.
So on your next column over fiscal year 2026, you've got moving 450 at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that number comes from us, that 3 million comes from us.
But no,
Okay,
yes and no. So again, this is only the expense side. So there are WACOG dollars going
Okay.
in to the fund that come out of that help support that 3 million, but there is 700 and some odd thousand that is city dollars.
well, that's a lot different than 3 million.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just saying
that's-
if we move the pond now and then
That's
we
the-
make the park and everything in fiscal year 26, right? Then that would alleviate a lot of pressure.
So, yeah, see, the
I really
the hard
can't.
thing about this conversation today is that part of the reason that we didn't say, well, Jamie, you've got to be in the room is because the focus is on those capital projects that are 5-6 years out. What Dave's trying to do is kind of say, okay, look, this is the plan we built, and then we're going to talk about extending the plan. Because we will have these in-depth conversations with the budget for next year that says, hey, these are the actual projects we're doing, and this is our new estimates. But so this document ends up getting used twice. Once where we're saying, what are we doing in 6 years? And then once that says, what are we doing this year and how does it align with our 6-year plan? And I think that conversation is the one that we'll have in the, February
Okay.
discussion, because that's when we'll have better construction estimates and know more about what's happening like with Ryan Forsyth, because I mean, the mayor was very clear with him and said, hey, you need to give us this before we will even look at moving any dirt.
But I think, John, there's another component of this. We need to kind of be thinking with both sides of the brain here. These are estimates. I understand that. But when you put down all the needs or the anticipations, and particularly if, we move the basin on our own, et cetera, then you have to figure out how to fund all this, right? Which comes into the,
And maybe that's what we need to do is, because this is what the total cost is, and it doesn't show you what WACOG's bringing in and what the sale of the properties is bringing it, like, that maybe we need to build this in two different
Well,
ways, so
to
that you
me,
guys can see.
I'd like the detention community pond, whatever you're talking about, that whole project, and say, this is how much it costs to do this, and this, and this is how much the city is gonna be responsible for.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a separate line. It says 2 million on there, but I'm like, okay, where's 2 million come from? And so that's what I think would be really be helpful. I understand all the, literally all the other things I, understand. That's the one I don't have a pinpointed, what is the city responsible for? So because if we do part of it, how much does that cost? If we do, just to get it from one place to the other, or is it, you gotta do all of it at once, or you can't do piece part? So, I mean, if there's a part one, part two, part three, or if it's all or nothing, that's, if we don't know, then, heck, can we send some kids over, start digging a hole over by Patriot Point? I mean, what can we do currently that is either minimal or something that's not gonna need to do it anyways, type of thing, that you can do on a catch can basis,
Well, and they've scrolled down a bit.
Yeah.
Because so in building this 5-year plan to this point, like the thing go all the way to the bottom, the thing that Jamie has built
2 million broken down by excavation.
is this conversation here, which is, this is how much money is
So you
actually
get-
available.
yeah.
And this comes because it includes, hey, look, there's this RDA transfer coming in, there's these impact fees coming in. There's a transportation, I am assuming that's but, so this is where she gets it, and so this helps us project out that, hey, in 2031, assuming all of our assumptions come true, which we know they won't, which is why we revisit this over and over and over, that we'll have $3 million in our capital improvement plan, project plan at the end of fiscal year 31. And so this sheet is meant to be dynamic, and it's supposed to give us all the expenses, all the revenues. Oh, sorry, I missed it. So it's 2.8.
Yeah.
But so at the end of this year, we're only gonna have 930,000 in capital improvement as far as our balance,
Plus the million.
plus the million. So we kind of have $1 million reserved for our emergencies. And you can see that million is taken out here, it doesn't now come back in this year. We're treating it like it's a subtraction because it just sits there. So really, fund balance will be 2.2, 2.5, 2.8. And so technically in fund balance here, if this plan worked out magically, we have $3.8 million sitting in the account, but we keep that $1 million. So if there's a catastrophic failure, specifically roads is where this money come out. An earthquake happens and we have to do an emergency repair on all our roads. We've got $1 million there. We can hold a budget meeting, amend the budget, and spend the money. So this is this is really that long-term plan. This shows us the year by year. And now we're really talking about how are we spending this money if we need to, because the mayor's point earlier, if we don't have a project here, if we don't have a 5-year or 10-year project that we're saving for, then we don't need to put as much money into CIP, which means we might not have to raise taxes next year. And so this is, after we finish this, we're going into those priorities. And whether or not we raise residents' property tax, it's not a priority as far as raising taxes, but it's a priority as a discussion and managing it really well. See, there I go. I'm like, I told you what one of your priorities is. And that's based on past conversations. But I think that's kind of the point of the conversation, is to help us understand where we're going so that we can build that 5-10 year plan and then come backwards and make sure that the plan's still working and tweak it as needed as things come up.
John, where on this, we have always budgeted to build that fund targeted at $300,000 a year. Where is that on there? Am I missing that?
Plus the general
Transfer,
fund
the original.
transfer.
There it is. I
Yeah.
didn't see that top line.
And we'll send you out this updated sheet along with all the other slides from today, so that you've got everything in your folders at home.
So,
But to John's point, the discussion we were trying to get to is talking about this year. And a lot this year has been, I'll be honest with you, or at least that we're hearing, me and Eric from the engineering side, is this one. I think this is your big elephant that, like, we
Fire
constantly talk about it, right? We have zero money for the next 6 years planned for it. So it's one of those things that, is it do you guys want to start punching it in somewhere here? Do we want to have those conversations? Do we want to push it all the way out to 31 before we even have any funding for it? And it's just that kind of stuff, right? It's what, and there's a million other things you could probably think of, but that was just one of the ones that this year we've had a couple conversations about, right? Like, what are we gonna do with Barker Park? Well, on our plans, there is no money injected into it whatsoever for the next 5
I don't know what the phases are, and I know there's a whole group that I'm not even allowed to talk about that or ask that.
Oh, good. Just knowing you
But I
Yes,
would
sir.
really love to see more parking there, like, tomorrow. So I think if there was a way to put parking somewhere in the near budget, the soon budget, that would be my vote. And I don't know if that's like a huge
Don't-
chunk of
I
money
think
or if
you have a
that's
field
just
or
a
something
small
we can just
phase,
pay
you
for.
know, and we spread out all these
Yeah,
phases
yeah,
over
we
the
don't
next
even
10
have a
years,
plan.
but.
Well, yeah,
Not
so.
paved, you just park on the grass.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But so, you know, like what Dave's talking about, like if we know that, hey, I mean, like Longview Pickleball Court, we're not doing anything, but if we do want something by 2031 to be done for Barker Park, then in theory, we could put it here and say, we're gonna spend, you know, $5 million on Barker Park. Again, it's a placeholder, nothing firm. But then the way the spreadsheet is built is it would then, if you went down to the bottom, it didn't show you what your balance is. And then you could start saying, well, if this is maybe the end date goal, then as part of this strategy session, then we start saying, hey, what if we did 1,000,000 in 28, 1,000,000 in 29, and 1,000,000 in 2030? Then what do we have left? And granted, on Barker Park, 1,000,000 at a time probably won't cut it because they're fairly big areas. However, we do have potential partners, right? Like we've got just if things we just there's families in the area that are interested in donating. There's businesses who want things from us. That makes it sound funny. There's the county wants some stuff from us. And so we're talking about, well, if you need to use our road for this or that, then why aren't you injecting money into our area? Those are the type of conversations. Sorry, I'm not sure how much is public on the other thing. I guess,
Well, apparently it's out there because.
okay. So I'm not
So,
gonna hurt anything.
But I think the decision is,
What
what
priority?
are we gonna do with Barker Park? Where's our community central place? Then you can say, okay, that's where it shows up, but what priority is Barker Park on the council's
Versus other things.
agenda?
Correct.
It's been sitting there for 20 years and, are we gonna do something or aren't we gonna do something? It's the premier park, and one of the things John's been working on and Ryan's kind of been giving him some input is, Eric met his commitment. We said we'd have a infrastructure plan and a plan for that park in 45 days. He met that,
Was that 5 different versions?
huh?
I think we did at least 5 different versions. but
There's
yes.
only 2 versions.
I know.
2 versions.
Circle.
One is with just total of natural grass and trails and teepees and things of that nature. The other one is what's going to attract people to that park? Because who wants to sell $15 million into a park that's not going to be used? So we asked the question, what would draw people to the park?
Correct.
And so based on Ryan's suggestion, he says, well, why don't you talk to the family and see if they'd allow a couple soccer fields in there to bring people,
Sports fields.
to the park. So Eric has drawn 2 plans.
Correct.
That has Bowery's bathrooms and one and all the infrastructure, because if you start piecemealing this without an infrastructure plan, you probably, from your engineer's standpoint, double your cost or triple it when you're duplicating everything.
Well, if you,
Stepping all over yourself.
yeah, especially when you end a road and you're like, well, we can't have that road there, so you have to disconnect it and go a different direction. Yeah.
Right. So the plan is there, but we just have to decide 2 things. One, is the Barker family, with the intent of what their sale was, are they gonna allow that? 2, what's the priority to the council? Because even if we get some of this money John's talking about, and what he's talking about is we've been approached by some folks up in Nordic Valley. Many of you may know that there's a lot of septic tanks up there. and it's starting to leach into the reservoir. So Ogden City's saying that's our drinking water source. You know, we've got to do something, and the county's saying we can't keep doing septic tanks up there. So we've been asked if somebody could connect into our sewer coming from the valley, which would save them an awful lot of money.
As opposed to building a plant up in the
Up there,
valley.
A lot of money. So one of the discussions we had with them, when we talk about that, but we got a big park we need to build. And you're saving X amount of money. We'd like to have you help us develop this park. But there's no use doing that if it's not a priority of the council to, you know, continue that, you know, development. They give us probably a good start, some pretty good seed money to get going, but the council needs to decide, is having a pristine or a community-centered park important? And if it is, how are we gonna fund it?
Neil, I don't think it's that it's not a priority. It's just we look at the budget and we go, well, if we really wanted to do that, technically that probably means we're gonna have to raise taxes.
Yeah, but if you make something a priority, then you figure out how to do it. And I guess that's the point, is that we don't have a priority. I mean, the
You're preaching to
priority,
the choir.
okay.
I want the Barker Park as
Yeah.
much as you do, right? But I'm also looking at it going, okay, 15 mil? Put the park in?
Could easily be,
Who
could
knows?
easily be.
And even
Is
though
that with or without John's splash pad?
it's the John Paul splash
Please
pad.
without.
So do I consider it a priority? I consider it a huge priority, but I'm also looking at going, you know, numbers are numbers.
Mhm.
Numbers are numbers.
True, but if you say it's priority and everything else isn't, so Oaklawn Park goes that way. Mountain View Park goes that way. You know, I mean, everything else starts pushing to the right. If you want,
I
yeah.
totally agree. And then we've
Okay.
got Christina who's going, well, we've already made promises that every year there's gonna be $250,000 already allocated to replace park equipment. So basically what we're saying, Chris, is, and I'm not a super numbers guy, but if we slap $5 million in there for 2031, that means there's a lot of things that change pretty dramatically over the next 6 years.
Either, I mean, looking at that number in 2031 and 30, our balance is $3 million. Which means there needs to be $2 million found from somewhere if we're gonna spend 5 million at Barker Park in 2031. To your point, yeah,
Or start doing small and then graduate, yeah.
and there are a
But you could
lot,
start doing it next year instead of
Well,
31 too.
and if,
There are grants, and it sounds like the Nordic folks are interested, and so putting 5 million in doesn't mean that we have to come up with $2 million.
it just sets
in
the
out of our
expectation
taxes.
that somehow our goal is to have an investment. It doesn't say, I mean, right now it would say, on this sheet, it would say, well, at this point, the city's injecting all of it because there's no other sources identified on the sheet. But again, this isn't locking us in. I mean, we're talking about what we're even spending this year when we're talking about the pond's $2 million, right? Because those things, they're on the plan, that's the goal, but they haven't been finalized because the council hasn't said, yes, sign the check. So if we can figure out what these projects are, and it's even really to the point, the only one that's on here at this point that doesn't have any money assigned is Barker Park. Because all the other stuff has already been funded in some way. And so really, we would go in and we'd start adding lines above the playground replacements and say, what are the other priorities? You know, Chris, for example, on the sheet the mayor sent me, trail and connecting trails and trailheads and things is something that the council may consider as a priority. And so if we're gonna do that, then hey, we've got to get it on the list. And so we're really talking about what do we need to add here? And then are we funding it in 2031 or 2032? Or is it such a high priority that now it moves this way and something else pushed like Oaklawn Park was just mentioned, well, that now bumps, right?
And-
It
and to me,
depends what
When I
you
look
want
at
to
that, that's pretty much tactical. Under what priority or what philosophy is money being allocated?
Right.
I mean, what is a strategic on that, if you look at it, what is strategic? Strategic is to have prime parks, updated parks. I mean, once you set the strategy and the priority, then you figure out how to fund it, right? And to Blake's point, if you can't figure a way to fund it, it's a nice thing nice priority, but how do you deal with it? But when you look at that, it's mostly almost replacement stuff, other than the Waterworks Park, where we negotiated with Johnny Hanson to deal with that.
Yep.
Most of the other stuff in there that's on the screen right now is maintenance almost, really. What's strategic? And that's what I'm trying to get at, I guess, as part of the discussion, is as a council or as a city, what's our strategy? What's our priorities? Because this is almost have to do stuff. I mean, I guess we could use the old method of just going 30 years on playground equipment.
Well, Neil, where are we at in communication with county commissioners? Where are we at as far as like do we have any kind of an idea on how much they would be willing?
Well, I don't know what the recent discussion is, but they've shown some interest in participating a little bit with us on that pond to control the flow of water out west, but they've just shown interest. There's nothing nailed down there.
Well, and then when I mentioned the tie to Barker Park, I should have said it's what's happening in the county, right? It's people in the up in the valley who want to invest in their area. And the only way they can accomplish that is by pumping the sewer up and over it. And Ogden's interested, right? But we haven't met with anyone besides just the landowner who has some interest in pumping the sewer basically into our main line and upgrading our main line to get it out to Central Weaver.
Yeah, see, they'd upgrade our line all the way down 2,600, which would save us a lot of money.
At a certain point, it needs to be replaced. So it would then be upgraded and sized for our future needs, their needs, and then there's a whole, like we're like the little crossing guard, right? on the freeway, right? There are so many things that have to be put in before it happens, but they're interested.
But you can't, let's say it does happen, and they're saying, hey, we want to help you with this part, which they've historically done in other cities, all right? And we say, well, let's get back to you in 10 years. They're gonna want to know, okay, what's your plan? What are you gonna do? How can we participate? Type situation. So to me, this is kind of good. We know this, but what's the city's strategy on spending their money, priority wise?
I think it's always good to put a number in there.
Because there's two things, and this may be or may not be the elephant in the room. But what does Barker Park mean? Because there are certain people in the city that want to inject $4 or $5 million more into the current amphitheater situation. Is that a priority for the city? Is it not? John's really pushing to put a wrought iron fence around it, for instance. These are the things he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to splash pad. He doesn't want to wrought iron. Okay, so let me just clarify that. He doesn't want those things. But and priorities can change by council, right? But what is this council's priority? Because Barker Park just does not mean just the unimproved part of the park. Correct. I mean, that encompasses everything.
Well, and maybe with this discussion, we should pivot a little bit and maybe go to our priority discussion, that's part of this, and say, hey, let's talk about our priorities. And then, because in a lot of ways, we really need to know where the council sees us in 5 years, 10 years, because if we're part of the issue that the city struggled with for so many years is, and the parks, parking lots are a great example. That has come up as a budget item many, many times in my time at the city. And what always ends up happening is when we make that yearly decision, we say, well, we can push it off a year. We can wait. We can do that next year, but it's always next year. And now we finally just said we can't wait anymore. So now it's $450,000 instead of what I would probably guess was $50,000 a year. Because we have to do a whole lot more tear out and replacement than if we had just coated it, track sealed it, and done stuff. So let's pivot and move to that conversation and see if we can talk about what are the visions, what are the goals, and then we can circle back, or we can even we don't have to stay here till midnight. I mean, I was thinking we'd be here till 2, maybe 3 for this meeting, and so I don't want to just. So this is the start of the conversation of the budget season. I mean,
Just really quick, before we leave this document, were you intending this to be edited as we talk?
no,
Okay,
what I was really hoping is that even at this column, and we didn't add new lines, or this column 31 didn't get finalized, it won't be finalized today. I just wanted our mind to be here, to be thinking what in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's probably the better way to think of it. In the next 5 years, what do we accomplish or want to? Because then we can come in and fill it into these categories.
well, it might help me a little bit to formulate my opinion if I knew where it could come out and that there was gaps and spots, you know what I mean? If we did play around with that document, $1 million here, $1 million there, I don't know, it might seem possible.
The problem is you start looking at numbers and your decision-making process changes based on the money.
That's true.
And you want to ignore the money for now.
Okay,
What do you
Good
want?
point.
And what do you think the priority of the city should be?
Then if they're
Safety,
unfunded.
yada, yada, yada.
okay,
And then, oh, we can't fund that. Okay, well then let's figure out what we can and can't do. So that's kind of what I was thinking is that,
that's a great idea.
See, because it's probably not 5 or 6 years down the road, but think about the council facing 10 or 15 years down the road,
right,
coming
right.
up with $3 million to renovate the aquatic center again.
All at once.
We were lucky that we had the RDA. We're not gonna have that next time. And the operations of the aquatic center do not include any depreciation or replacement.
Yeah.
But somebody's gonna have to face that.
Well, I think that is part of the priorities communication, discussion, is that we don't push any big problem all at once, to all at once, that we invest a little over a lot
Oh.
of years.
You don't have to convince us of that, because that's what happened to us. We hadn't,
How'd you do it
we
backwards? That's
hadn't funded
insane.
anything for 17
That's
years.
amazing,
Right, I'm
John.
with
Then all of
you.
a sudden.
That's not any
everything-
good for
I'm
you.
with you.
That's why
I
we
agree.
started budgeting 300,000.
You just have to write it on the other side. of it.
Because.
You just gotta write
everything's
backwards.
pushed down the-
Mhm.
kicked
Does
down
it
the
mirror?
road, kicked
I
down the road,
really
kicked
am
down the
glad
Oh,
road.
yeah.
that you put the playground
There it
schedule
is.
there. I'm not
There you
stuck
go.
to it, but I love. that
Good
it's
catch.
there.
Yeah,
Well,
There was no plan to ever replace.
okay, so let's pivot to this side of it. And then we can talk about it. Do you want me to kick it off by telling you what I think the city's priorities have been?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Go
Based,
ahead.
based upon discussions we've
Based
had.
upon based upon past discussions about priorities.
Mhm.
So. That correct? That this is on the list, public safety?
I like
I think this parks has shown up as a priority with the way we've tried to catch things up. Not necessarily new parks, but maintaining what we have. So maybe I'll put maintenance.
But John, I think we've had a priority of trying to increase parks where we can and making the city, because we
That's true with the
negotiate on the
new
water
parks. Yeah,
but you're right, it's mostly been focused on getting up to speed, getting where we should be in the parks we've got.
so I would agree with new facilities. And then one that was stated last year in our thing was employee retention. If anyone ever wants to steal my notebook, good luck on deciphering it, because I do this with no logic. I abbreviate everything. So, oh, there was one more.
When you say new facilities, what do you mean? Is that?
Parks,
that
water
specific
tanks,
works?
roads, things like that. But, when the mayor said new, I mean, this is, we're not just looking at what we have, but also planning for the future. That's been something council's been focused on.
Well, yeah, because if you look at it, just to give some color to the new facilities. And I think has to be in our discussion. What do we want people to think of North Ogden when they come here? That's why we put some money into the trailhead, right? Because people come to North Ogden to use our trails, see the flag, and what they were faced with was turned over porta potties and rutted dirt parking lot, right? Is that what we want for our city? You know, we were probably the only city in the state that didn't have any pickleball courts, right?
Yeah.
But we wanted to have our citizens have a reason to stay in the city and have that availability. You know, is that a priority for the city? So when you talk about new facilities, I think one of the umbrellas have to be here is, what is North Ogden? You know, how do we market ourselves? What do we want it to, you know, to look like? But I think we've tried to balance those two, John. I agree with you. Park maintenance and new facilities. You know, public safety was probably in need of a new building, what, 10 years ago?
Well, at least,
Yeah.
since I moved here 20 years ago.
And to Council Severing's point, you look at it and you say, wow, they were balking at $6 million, right? And it ended up costing us 14. But if we waited another 10 years, it cost us 25. But we figured a way to make that happen, right?
Or 2 years,
Yeah,
right? Was one of our neighboring cities has found out.
but we found a way to make that happen, right? Slade? Because it was a priority.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Even though that was a big number, the most money the city's probably ever spent, we figured a way to make that happen, right?
We sure did.
So I
So,
think that's the point that Councilmember Pulver's making. If it's important to us, we'll figure out a way to make it happen. If it's not important to us, let's not waste our time trying to figure out how to make it happen.
And to exactly that point, if we can figure out what is important, then we can start talking about what those goals are to get to those important things. And I've got more information, and I hate to spoil the surprise, but if by raise of hands, how many of you say public safety is #1 in the city? Okay. Now, this is the trick question. As a matter of percentage, out of the 137 agenda items on the council agenda this year, from January till now, how many times did we talk about public safety?
12.
Less than 5%.
But this is, and I may be completely out of my lane, so please check me, because this is your meeting. But what's helped me is, let's say this was our priority, let's say this was the council's priority all the time, in that order. Let's say it's that order. If we go back and reverse, we would take that information and reverse it and set a mission statement for the council or for the city itself, you will always come in and you write it like that. We want a safe community with beautiful parks and beautiful buildings and the best employees you can ever find. That's your statement, let's say. That's your order as well. And so every time you make a priority or you make a goal for the city that year, whatever it might be, you just make sure it hits one of those 4 things and it's in the order that you want.
And this is exactly what I'm getting at with this little factoid, right? We've had public safety agenda items 3 times out of 137. So it's like 1.5%, right? I mean, it's not that often. And the issue is, it is not that we're doing a bad job, meaning that the numbers we're seeing have shown that the steps the council has taken has been huge. And we also have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of the financial discussions, of which there have been 23, involve public safety and involve salaries for public safety and equipment for public safety. So there's a little bit of that 3 is not 100% right. However, when you look at this list of priorities, that's not where we spend our time. And to the chief's point, when we do our new list of priorities, many of these same things will slide over, and they don't necessarily have to be in order. My hope is that we can then start focusing the council's efforts on those priorities, because what we've been doing so often is just dealing with the stuff that gets thrown at you. A good example is, I think growth in the city is a council priority in the sense that it's on the mind of the council. But it's also on the mind of the council because it's the thing that's on the agenda more often than anything else. If you were to include the approvals and acceptance of subdivisions improvements, it is almost double anything else that the council talks about. And if you discount those, because I pulled those out, there's 14 of those that we approved this year. It's still 25 times we're talking about annexations and development agreements and rezones. And so it's being forced on you. And whether it's a priority or not is up to the council, but it's being forced on you.
I'm just looking at this list and this may fit in, but where is citizen well-being on that? I mean, is it public safety? We're saying, is that citizen well-being? I mean, our priorities ought to be something in there to have well-being for our citizens, which it would encompass, things like recreation.
Community engagement, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's maybe an inadvertent way we've left off our priorities list is, citizen well-being, and that may include keeping
Parks.
them safe. Having,
Have an essential,
community engagement, I think somebody,
Engagement,
but,
communication.
well-being includes, having parks, having recreation, having, great police force, all those things.
Mhm.
And maybe that ought to be the umbrella deal,
Well,
is citizen well-being,
and
and then we define it.
it's really
Truly
interesting
the
that
priorities.
you say that, Mayor, because we spent 25 agenda items on land use and 24 I put in the community category. Talking about cherry days, talking about amphitheater, talking about the show at the amphitheater next year, right? Like, so we've spent a lot of time on that. But we never, I don't know that in our discussion last year, we said, this is one of our goals and our priorities.
But community well-being, John, includes land use, right?
Yes, it does, yeah.
Because, for instance, commercial development, literally that could be under community well-being because the burden on our citizens is so heavy on property tax because of lack of any other source of revenue, that it's creating some real challenges for people who maybe don't have, they've left their employment and now they're trying to enjoy life in the retired state. But the burden is so heavy that they're wondering if they can even stay in their house.
and that, like, commercial or economy more is what you're
Or
talking about.
the balance. For instance, we spend a lot of time on density.
Mhm.
How does that fit in? What's our goal in the city to balance that? We wanna have housing for our people. But we don't wanna be overwhelmed either way.
You're exactly right, Mayor, that some of these topics are so holistic that breaking them down into line items isn't functional, except for the idea that when you start with that end goal, the chief's point, kind of this overarching mission, then you can break it into these little components and say, how do we make sure that density, let's assume the state imposes density on us, is still good density that leads to community well-being,
Yeah, but.
so we can,
The density, people are tired of me talking about this. I still have to laugh about this when I was talking about infrastructure. People go out and make a video of developers putting the pipe in the ground. Look, I understand that. What I'm talking about is, okay, the well-being of our community, if we're gonna grow and have density. How are we gonna plow the streets? How are we gonna police this? How are we gonna?
Yeah.
Those soft things, and that's well-being, and we need to plan for that because the city's gonna grow and it's gonna have a certain degree of density in it.
Mhm.
So how do we plan ahead and look for that
We not only want community well-being now, but we want it in the
long
future,
term?
no matter how big our city grows. Is that right?
Yeah,
And one thing I probably I should have started off with the rules for this discussion.
okay. Back up.
Okay.
We're breaking
There
the
we go.
rules
Now we're
already.
getting there.
But so far we've been good.
Are these John's rules?
Yes, these are John, they're like Robert's rules, except, you know. What I want to do with these priorities is what I call a yes session. A yes session. So anytime an idea is spit out, because I think we should just list off anything that might be a priority. Nobody can say, no, that's a bad idea. Because we're not gonna stifle, and no one's done that yet,
So
so.
you want specific things or esoteric things?
Yes.
Yes, all of the above.
Okay, maintain that senior center.
Senior center, I mean,
Community
and
well-being.
what I mean is and because then we'll have this as a list, and then, you know, we can work on pushing them and saying, hey, you know, it may fall into this, but it also may also just fall into a category where it's a priority, right?
Do we have to raise our hand? Is that one of your rules?
Yeah, yes,
This may under public safety, but roads.
Roads and sidewalks.
And when it comes to roads, if that is really a priority for the council, then they have to address the transportation utility fee, right?
Mhm.
Because that's the only way you're gonna catch up on the roads.
yeah,
But if that's a priority, is to get our roads in shape.
yeah, because if roads, and I'm gonna say what you just said is a yes, and yes, it's a priority, and we would need to do this, right? But there's two ways to pay for it, and one is fees, if I can spell, and taxes. Or we
Is
can
there a
put benevolent
difference?
donors,
Forced benevolent.
yeah, benevolent donors.
Is there a difference between fees and taxes, John?
In a legal sense, yes, but in a reality, it's not, there's no difference because
Comes out of
it
the,
comes out of the same people's pockets, right? So what are other potential priorities?
You say Barker Park and defining trails throughout the city. So I think that's been something we've been talking about is the signage that was a huge presentation.
Yeah, the wayfinding,
Mhm.
and staff jump in. This is, you are all part of the leadership, because there's no decisions being made.
I would say those might be subcomponents of we need a new mission, values,
Vision
and vision.
yeah.
Do we need a new one?
Or themes, you can call
Uh,
them themes too.
I can tell you the ones that were on the wall here that no one knew, it's probably good you didn't know them because they didn't match our current ones anyways.
So,
Are they on our website?
No.
because.
Yeah, I
to me
couldn't
that
find 'em,
falls
yeah.
under-
I look for 'em, I thought-
No.
How do
it's not on
we
there.
market the city? How do we bring people?
Yep.
Because if we have commercial development, we've got to get people into the city.
Need a big sign too.
Now, why will they come to North Ogden? How do we market ourselves?
Flashing.
Is this goals just financial or any goals?
Any goals?
I would say some kind of community feel or communication, like gathering people together to strengthen relationships. I don't know. So communication maybe.
Amphitheater plays a big part of that. Bringing people to the city.
Unity.
Yeah, unity, communal, like a communal feel. You know, you're
But I
part
don't-
of the family.
I think you've got to decide where that community gathering place is.
Mhm.
And then you work towards making it a community gathering place.
Yeah, because having the goal to create it, then you come off and you build your little components and say, we need a community spot. You know, so we need a spot, and then you say, it's a park, it's a city hall, it's a, you know, and then you can start saying, this is how we're gonna gather people together to meet this priority.
Because if you said, what is the community gathering spot in Far West, what would people say? Smith Park.
Oh, I would say Maverick,
Yeah.
because that's where I see all the people that I know.
Some people would say Smith and Edwards.
Smith and Edwards, oh yeah. But no, because, but that's okay, because having more than one spot isn't always a weakness. It might be a strength.
But you know what, I think I don't disagree with the idea that we're working on, but I think we've done a really, really good job over the last. I don't think North Ogden is lacking in community.
But it can always be
But
improved.
it can be improved, sure, it can be improved, but I don't think I mean, in my opinion, you take these priorities, I mean,
So-
public safety makes people feel better about being in North Ogden. Parks makes people feel better about being in North Ogden.
So you, if I understand you right, you're not saying this is a bad idea, because that would violate John's rules. What you're identifying is that it's a strength that we can improve on, but it's still a strength.
Well, I just sometimes think, you know what, somebody wisely taught me years ago, you chase too many rabbits and all of them are gonna escape, right?
Oh,
So we focus on what we feel is the priority
correct.
and we budget what is the priority. But I don't think we also undermine what's gone on in the past. Because I think, I mean, other than 2 years in a mission and 3 years at BYU, I've lived in North Ogden all my life and I love living in North Ogden. And I think most people would agree with that.
Right, so the
Let's keep it
whole,
going, is all I'm saying. Let's keep it going.
well,
Yeah, let's keep it going, but I don't think it's been that we've done things bad.
In fact, just yesterday, I was talking to somebody that just moved to Ogden and I said, how do you know what's going on? And she said little signs that are on the side of the road, not the big ones, the little small ones. So she knows who to go for roofing and stuff like that. And so I said, well, what about the newsletter? She's like, what newsletter? And so it's getting the new people or the people that don't know anything about North Ogden, even when they live here for 15 years, they not part of the cool kids. And
Yeah.
so that's to me is the push to, you know, I was waiting. I didn't do anything. I signed up for the email and it came in the email because, you know, that was the first attempt. But I think that's good. Now people will do that. But I think the push should be getting out to everybody. You know, here's where maybe that is a mailer. We mail it to every household. Here's the thing where you can get North Ogden information.
well, and again, you know, following John's rules, what we're trying to do is a list
Yeah.
anything that's a potential.
Yep.
So we cannot do all of even just this list. And I think we've got more that could be added.
Yeah.
But what we want is a list that even has some terrible ideas on it, that then we can whittle it down and say, you know what? Between Rhodes and Barker Park, the council chooses this as the priority. Or we prioritize them in a numerical order. And then we start figuring out who's gonna decide, who's gonna be the recommending body to the council on those items. Like communications is a good, I think having communications as a city council goal it's been on the radar a lot. But does the city council need to be the one that makes that decision? Meaning how it's done. Suggestions are awesome. They need to be injected. But if we can just get everything that might be a priority on the list, then at the next time, if we run out of time today, the council can digest this for a couple of weeks and then in a work session say, okay, now these are our priorities. And then what we'll do is we'll go down and we'll say, okay, well, like, what's the dollar sign for communication? Probably not as big, like definitely not as big as the dollar sign for Barker Park. Because what we're trying to do is get our priorities lined out and then find out how that impacts our budget. And then this is the easiest part in the sense that we're just brainstorming ideas.
John, real quick.
Yeah.
JD says he's not a panelist. I don't know if he has anything to add here. Is that
I
too
sent him
hard?
an invitation, but maybe he got
Okay.
disconnected.
I had another idea, maybe something along the lines of the residents and citizens will be proud of the community that they're from. Pride in where they, yeah. I
No,
mean,
go-
not
go to
like
the
I'm better
webinar
than
one.
other communities necessarily, but just
No, go back to the Zoom.
glad that they live here, you know?
And then hit the
I'm gonna
webinar,
call it
yeah.
buy-in.
It should-
Yeah, that's great.
Participants.
I was
You should, yeah, you should be able to click on there,
He
grab
says,
him and hit these dots. And then hit promote to panelist.
I was somewhere the other day, and I don't know how old this was, but there was a little rock. It was a good sized rock. And the house had beautiful landscaping. And it had, gosh, where was it at? Was it out in Taylor or something like that? And it had something defective, best landscaped home in the city or something like that, 2021 or something like that. You know, I don't know if that's something to consider, but I mean, it's kind of developing a spirit of place. You know,
Yes,
encouraging proper landscaping and your house looking nice and.
I agree. Great idea. It's over here.
Oh, but you're.
Meaning,
Just
'cause-
share it.
Oh, no, I get it. No, but what I'm trying, like, communication and community buy-in, but maybe let me, instead of trying to add it onto here, is there a citizen recognition? Should there be a component? And I guess what I'm saying is, everything's a good idea right now, right? And I'm gonna put engagement. That might fall under communication, but maybe it doesn't.
So a priority should also probably be projecting out. That's kind of the retention part, but you know, looking at planning for inflation and population growth, because as population growth goes up, then you know, city staff, police, you know, all that stuff has to go up. So I don't know how you want to couch that, but
I was,
Population growth planning, maybe?
yeah.
but, Chris, maybe subcategory of that is, I think with all, it's just like in healthcare, for instance, they recognize that there's not gonna be available people to provide healthcare, so they're looking at ways to work smarter through automation,
Efficiency, yeah.
artificial intelligence, because I don't think that, because the growth in the city doesn't, the property tax we collect from the growth of the city doesn't even provide us enough to fund additional public safety.
No.
So, we're gonna have to figure out how to work smarter in the growth of the city. Because if we proportionally grow with the number of people, so where does, you know, I think one of our priorities is to figure a way to figure how to use technology in our growth strategy. I think technology has to be a part of that. And I understand, you know,
Autonomous snowplows.
Well,
So they'll be here someday.
self-driving snowplow.
Yeah.
and you're right. In a lot of cases,
It's like the water
we
meter.
can, right? The water meters it's saved us probably 2 employees, right? By being able to go to the fixed base system that we have right now. And so that's a huge thing that we always have to look to see if that's something that we can do. But then there's like the other flip side of it, like the parks. When you're doing maintenance and we're adding, you know, if we do Barker Park, you're probably gonna have to add 2 to 3 employees just for that facility, right? You know, by the time you do that, and if you do the pond and you do, you know, the Waterworks Park. So yeah, it's one of those things that definitely has to be a balancing thing.
But in
It's
that,
catch 22.
and this is a simple thing, but, you know, maybe along the way, there's a type of grass that's developed, you only have to mow once a month. Right now, we're laying grass that has to be mowed every week,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So you know, you look at new technologies, and it doesn't have to be software, but, you know, new technologies as part of our growth plan.
Or like, I mean, Jamie and those guys have suggested just taking all of our park strips and turning into Xeriscape would save us, they think of almost a day of mowing, just in park strips, because of how much you have to stick edge and how you have to, you know, it's a lot of hands-on work, so.
And I think you have to
You're
look, for
exactly right.
instance, I remember a couple of years ago, we had two maintenance departments, right?
Yeah.
One was maintaining all the park stuff. We had this duplication, right? I think you came in and said, hey, we can do that.
Yeah.
So now we're doing that maintenance with less people, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, and that's always that battle, right? You have to always check, right? But yes, technology is a huge part of that. And
So,
being able to just not, and Mayor always says it, not always do what you've always done. So,
you have to look at a different way of doing things, right? Correct. Because things are changing so rapidly.
I think employee retention is still important, parks maintenance is still important. You already have public safety on there. You know, keeping up with our facilities and maintenance, probably, I don't know. I also think this probably falls along the same things I've already said with communication, unity, and buy-in to the community, but, you know, tradition, like Cherry Days is something that people are, you know, looking forward to and excited about throughout the year and expecting out of their community. So maybe that falls right in line with those.
I mean, we could, I mean, it, like you said, it's, nothing's a bad idea, and maybe Cherry Days, it might encompass a bunch of this, but it still might be worth singling out as a priority.
I like it, Cherry Day.
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect way to go.
Here, I'll make it even worse. How about this? Cherry Days.
I would
Misspelled
add,
cherry.
It's actually Sherry Days.
nobody even caught that except for you. Equipment. In with the facility maintenance, like, I think the city's council and over the last several years has done a very good job of helping us keep up with equipment, and that goes with the, you know, our snowplow trucks, the you know,
Dump truck.
yeah, the dump truck, like, yeah, we've done a really
The,
good job of keeping up. I mean, we could go back to that list because we didn't even make it to that portion of the list, but we have all the equipment lined out there. And it used to be 5, 6, 7 years ago, we had 20 pieces of equipment that were over 20 years old. And I think on that list today, I think we only had 3 or 4 that are over that time frame. So I mean, we've done a really good job at equipment
It took,
maintenance
it
as well.
took your recommendation and your experience to get us there.
So, you know, a lot of companies have an average age goal on the equipment, their buildings, etc. I think the old philosophy was use it till it dies. What was it?
Yeah.
Till it wears out
Yeah,
or
pretty
something.
much.
What was that? I mean, seriously, there's some saying about that.
Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without.
Yeah, that's it.
There's actually a motivational poster. It's a pencil that's about this big, and it says retirement. And think of it as equipment retirement, when basically there's not, you have nothing less left of use to the company.
Yeah.
Like that's not the case, but yeah. So I wrote that down. Equipment updates, and call it staying on top of it, call it whatever. But you know, with the past, you know, 8 years, the focus on not kicking stuff down the road has been huge. Right, and when you think 8 years, that may sound like a long time. That's when Mayor Chug started, it was 8 years ago. Right? 7 years ago. 2 years Mayor Chug, 5 years Mayor Brewer.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah, 7 years. But yeah, so other ideas. Ryan, priority?
With an eye.
Ah.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
So, I mean, if we don't put something on there, is that telling, like, we don't put pool down there, then that means it's not a priority?
Well, so it could be.
Okay, that's what I was saying. If we don't put something down, is it not a
So what am I
Inherently not.
forgetting then? I better go through my list.
Green waste?
green waste? Yeah.
Yeah. We might be, are we too low for the, no, okay. We've got the whole board. And again, this is a list of potential candidates. We're gonna have a primary runoff where we narrow it down, right?
Can we add, I know this is just
Yes.
funding me.
Yeah.
But in the priority box,
Priority?
under, yeah.
Well, so
under-
this is last year's. These arrows mean these have been moved over.
New
Oh,
So
facility.
there's
well,
no-
you put
but-
the word priority
facility
in there,
does
so
not
I thought it
have
was still our.
Yeah,
our
this is
focus for
all-
20.
This is new,
Okay.
but yes, what would you like to add?
Well,
to
I
the
was
list?
just thinking that I love I mean, as you guys have so kindly observed, you know, we've worked really hard worked really hard to compensate the employee, so employee retention, but I also think that we need to continue providing that employee services or citizen services, right? I mean, we want to make sure that the roads are plowed effectively. We want to make sure that parks do look good. So maybe that kind of fits in
Yeah.
other areas,
Well,
but
if it gets blended later, that's great, but having it on the list, we know it won't be forgotten.
You know, and come back to what the chief was saying today when I asked him about the county and the $10,000. It seems like one of our strategies or priorities to be is a preferred place to work. Because everybody is trying to have the same, they're opting for the same employees, right? So if we're going to have a goal to be a preferred place to work, then we have to figure out how to do that, right? But it seems like to me that none of this other stuff's gonna happen without having the right people in place. And in today's environment, the only way we're gonna have that is to figure a way to be preferred place of employment. Which would mean we hire the right type of supervisors that create the culture. Because I still believe, even though salaries is creeping up, that most people leave because they can't stand their supervisor. Or they can't stand the culture they live in.
They don't feel valued. That's
Right.
the number one reason.
But, yeah, so if you're gonna be a preferred employer, one of the, you know, to your point, number one is they have to feel valued, and then you figure out how do you do that, like that, but it seems like to me that we can't have a community well-being, we can't have all this other stuff unless we have the right people, as Blake said, Lake Collins, as I'm calling him now. In place, and to do that, we have to be a preferred employer, so I would say if it's a goal or a priority, our priority ought to be to figure out how to be a preferred employer.
Yeah, well, so great. So here's, and this is kind of like the exciting thing about these yes sessions, I think, is that had we not, we're not done, don't think you're out of this yet, but this, kind of what we've talked about, how this thing here, create value to employing the residents. Like I added the residents to yours, Mayor, what you just said, because if residents feel value in the community, in what's happening, then they're gonna be less upset about, well, just what we're spending money on.
Hey, I want to make a correction here.
Yeah,
I think I was, since community well-being, so
Yeah.
everything we ought to do, the umbrella ought to be community well-being, so I would say, residents is already, I don't want you to think I skipped the residents. In other words.
oh, no, I'm just saying that, like, when, this is me, I hate motivational books. Anytime someone says synergy to me, my skin crawls.
You
And
need to sharpen yourself.
Yes, those, but, so, so I love things that you haven't heard before, right? And this create value has been said a lot, but I like it because it hasn't been used in government a lot. How do you create value? Typically, it's always just, how do I create value for my work, for my employer? Like it's me creating it for the city as opposed to the city creating it for me. So that I like that spin. That's why I hate motivational books. It's because sometimes those principles are really amazing. And sometimes they're. Sorry, it goes back to a presentation a guy did called The Flow when I was 20 years old, and I just, anyways.
Dog park,
Dog park, okay.
a mayor's gonna hit electronic sign for the city.
Okay.
No bad idea.
That's right, no nose.
Yes, Kim.
You have one.
I was gonna bring a taboo buzzer, and if someone said no, I was gonna be like.
I didn't say no. I didn't say no.
Okay. Brian, did you think of your priority yet?
A rec center.
Hey.
Okay.
No bad ideas.
Take everything else off that, because you don't have any money to do anything else.
That was just a joke. That was just.
There's no bad
Double
ideas.
dogs here.
That was more of a joke.
Wait,
You didn't actually.
Okay.
Goes on there. It's on public now.
Wait, this is a yes session, it's there.
That's right.
It's there.
Because ideas can be tweaked, right? Mayor talked about pickleball earlier. Pickleball is a rec center, it's just a different type. So we get to define what center means. Is it just a very robust adult program across our parks? So it's not a physical building, meaning this point can lead other directions. So, no bad ideas, that's what I'm saying.
I like it.
Youth sports probably goes in there, right?
Yeah. It goes on
What
here,
about adult sports?
sure.
I know. You gotta
See, I
play,
think,
Jim.
John, I think we're getting into the tactic part here
Could be.
instead of the strategies. Because all these things in my mind, and I'm not saying I fall under community well-being. So the strategy is community well-being. These seems to be tactics. We're getting over into the tactics part.
I think you're right, and we might be to that point in the conversation where we start saying, okay, if community well-being is the priority, and it's the umbrella over which all of these other things fall under, then eventually what we have to do is say, what creates or adds value to this in the highest priority, or the most impactful way. And then you might say things like, well, public safety has a significant impact on community well-being, and so does Cherry Days, right? But then you have to start saying, how much money does Cherry Days cost, and how much does it add compared to how much does public safety cost, and how much does it add? And I want to say is that there's this relationship that then the council gets to delve through of public safety dollar for dollar probably has a bigger impact on community well-being, even though it's very expensive. The dollar for dollar value is probably higher than Cherry Days, but Cherry Days still adds something, right? So it's just this weird like thing, and that's, if we want to, we could start grouping these, or we could say, hey, we're getting close to 2 o'clock. We're all done talking. I mean, I don't have anything else planned today, but so whatever the group wants to do.
We haven't heard anything from JD. Is he?
Oh, JD.
Maybe he's not with us. I don't know.
Well, or he might be doing something else, meaning he's listening, but can't like grab his phone and turn it on mute.
But you know, John, I just keep thinking,
Well,
about
at 1:31, he said, I'm here. It's okay. I don't need to chime in. That
Okay.
was,
I just keep thinking about, Chris has got the Powers book. That's the power book that they. Right?
Yep.
You know, the first chapter reminds us that, you know, our number one priority is the health, safety, and welfare, right? And without trying to get too psychological, as those hierarchy of needs. It's there, right? So I mean, that's where initially when we were talking, that's where initially when you wrote priorities over there, I thought that really is always going to be our priority, whether it's 2024, 2025, 2026.
And that's kind of the reason why, so like I did rewrite public safety because I don't know how long our list was going to be. And so I was trying to move stuff over that I thought the council would, or that I felt right. But then I got a little, right, I'm just moving stuff over. But I think you're right. So this health, safety, welfare is this overarching principle that gives government the police powers that it has. That's our job. The hard thing about that is we also operate in different areas because we're talking health, safety, and welfare as far as public safety. The city's role can be different or inherently is different than the health, public safety, welfare of education. Because the city's role in education, can anyone think of how we impact education? Dave might be able to.
Teaching kids, is that what you're talking?
Yeah, education of our kids. How do we impact that?
Land to build a school.
I'd probably
Roads?
youth sports.
Roads, gotta get there.
Yeah.
Roads and
Sidewalks.
clouds,
Sidewalks.
right? Because there's a whole other group that does the majority of it. But if they can't drive there in the winter or year round, so it's just this weird, like, we have to decide what is our niche and what is our focus, because we can't do it all. We don't want to take over the school system, but we can support them. And I don't know that we've talked about this with the council, but on heavy snow days, our plow trucks prioritize school routes and bus routes. They make sure the buses can get to the kids and the kids can get to the schools. To the point of when it dumps in the middle of the day, our plow truck drivers will go out and drive in front of the school bus. We've done that before to get the kids home safely. And so it's this weird thing, because when you talk health, safety, and welfare, it's everything. And North Ogden City's role in that, we need to focus. Because we're not
That
given,
really becomes the umbrella.
yeah. And it's, I mean, that's why I wrote it up here, right, by community well-being, that is it. And there's also only so much we can do.
So do we need to be finer than saying community well-being? Because if that's everything, then that can't be a priority, because that's everything.
But if this is the priority that then takes the focus of your sub priorities, right? You're creating almost like a Maslow's hierarchy, right? I'm going to say it the opposite way. What's the top of the pyramid? Or maybe what's the foundation of the pyramid? Community well-being. Well, then what are the things that stack up on it? And when I think of Maslow's model, it's usually vertical or horizontal lines. I like to think of it more like this, that you end up with these categories of items. And yeah, you've got the vertical, but if you're talking public safety, if those part 1 crimes are not handled, then you can't be focusing on your Explorer program.
Right. That's absolutely right.
And so it almost feels like with what we're doing is establishing the baseline goals. And each of these categories, I mean, we might have this, we're going to have different levels with different themes. Even though we'd like everything to be up here, everything can't get there because we don't have enough money. And so the council's going to be taking this and dividing it into bigger and smaller slices, and then deciding, hey, before we get to the Explorer program, we're going to get our part 1 crimes in line. Although we heard today they are, right? Sure is quiet today, Chief. Oh, God. Sorry. But so anyways, would it make a lot of sense for us to send you this list and you digest and think about it, and we put it into a new work session?
Let's do it.
No, I think we're primed.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. Dave, do you need a picture, or do we just want to keep?
There's another whiteboard next to you.
Yeah, but I can't move.
Okay.
That one on the wall, mounted to the wall.
This way.
You can't smell.
Oh, but we can just.
Oh,
Wow.
we got a blank board now. Start over.
Start over.
You got John in the picture?
Yeah,
holding
of
it.
Yes,
Ran away.
yes, of course.
So, do you want to do that? Do
Back
you
and-
want to go
just go back
community
and forth.
well-being and
Why don't we just erase them?
We'll go
erase
back.
the ones that aren't important?
That's a lot to try to
Or
put
group
into a 1,
them.
2, 3, 4, 5.
They probably all
Kind
fit
of
into
category.
subcategories.
Or do you want to just number them?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think you gotta break them down into stuff and then
So I would say public safety and roads are like number 1, because that's basically what you were just stating.
You got different colors, you could circle them under subcategories.
Then you're gonna mess up the
Yeah.
markers.
let's do public safety in red.
Well, what if-
Instead of blue, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
see, I feel
So-
that. I feel it.
Roads and public safety are both underlined in red. What else is a fundamental, gotta have it?
The pool. I'm just kidding. No, don't.
But the pool
I
is
say,
here.
we've now left the
The
yes
tool is
session.
That's
Now we
why it's quiet.
we appreciate differing opinions offered responsibly.
But, isn't that what Will taught us this morning?
Others that,
Like the priority. I mean, when you talk about, are we down to the second one? I mean, what do you,
Well, if we're like, hey, I feel like this other one might be a tier 2 product, we can do a green or an orange.
I would say citizen services are a priority.
Number 1,
Yeah. I would consider.
and
it
you've
number
got it
one.
here, over here. Can I make a suggestion on what I think you're being forced to make a priority?
Growth.
Growth.
Yeah.
I don't, this is my opinion, I don't think you have the option. I don't think you have to inject a ton of money into it, but if this is not on your radar, they will force it on your radar, because it was the most, I mean, this is what you talked about the most last year. Maybe even hour-wise is what you spent the most time on last year.
I don't know where it is, priority wise, but I know making sure commercial gets in here quicker has to be up top. I know, but I don't know if it's number 1 or if it's number 2 is what I'm saying. Commercial.
What does the group think? Is it a red priority? Or is it a?
I mean, it's not essential, obviously, so that's why I'm like waffling.
I think for the current situation we're in right now,
I think,
it is a priority,
okay,
because we're gonna have to put the money into, being able to get the property on 2700, we're gonna have to move that.
it's true.
So we're kind of in a position where it's kind of a force.
Well, technically, we don't have to move that detention pond. technically.
So, and what you're doing is you're just narrowing your list. You're not chiseling it out in granite.
So then,
Right,
then
so-
underline, there you go.
I feel like it's okay to say, you know what, John, never mind, we want it to be a different priority level.
Are we prioritizing in order right now, or are we just subcategories?
Subcategory, we're just kind of grouping. What we're trying to do is take the tier 3 things,
Right,
and those we're not gonna get to. In the sense of to really plan for them. They might happen naturally, but they might not be the focus, or they won't be the focus. Mayor?
I was just thinking, I know this is kind of a subcategory, but I believe there was a priority in the city for 17 years not to increase property taxes, right? Would you agree?
Mhm.
What's our priority now? Is our priority to have, what's our fiscal response? I think we need a category called fiscal responsibility at some point in time. Because the philosophy has been tossed out, well, do we do little just increases automatically, or do we increase taxes based upon, so at some point in time, I know it's not the generator of ideas, but I think we do need to have a philosophy on what our fiscal responsibility is. Because I don't believe it's to, I mean, it might be to minimize tax increases, but it's not to not have, that's not our goal. I believe, I don't know.
Well,
That's the council.
we don't want to
decision.
sacrifice our higher priorities just for the tax rate, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but how do we, is our priority have fiscal conservatism by meeting these goals? I mean, that's what I don't know, because, if you want to talk about citizen well-being, there's a lot of people in our city whose monthly property tax bill is higher than any mortgage payment they've ever made. Now, ours is only like 10% or so of the deal, but when it talks about community well-being, where do we find that balance? Because if it starts to be making my property tax payment versus eating healthy, so
and I
I only
think,
bring that up because I believe there was a priority, a philosophy. We're not increasing property taxes for any reason.
well, and yes, that was the philosophy. It was the people championing themselves on that. And so I've used the mayor's executive veto to underline this in red, not necessarily that it's a priority to not, or it's a priority to increase, but this is a priority that is always on the mind of the residents and in reality, your budgeting decision making. So whether or not this is something that you're gonna say, hey, this is a goal, but this is gonna be one of those things that is a priority to make sure you've got a sound policy on that.
Because that's how people win elections, right? I won't raise property taxes no matter what.
Yeah, there are those who jump on that. Okay, anything else that needs to be, I mean, right now you've got 5.5, because this almost is involved in all of this. What, is there anything else on this that is so important that it needs to be a council priority?
I think we really,
Oh, sorry, I was
No,
gonna
please
just
go
say
ahead.
the value of the employees and the residents. If we don't have good employees, we're not doing any of this.
that's exactly.
I'm back to the preferred employer status,
Mhm.
whatever it takes. What does that mean? I don't know what it means, but that's ought to be our goal.
Yeah.
People want to work for us
Mhm.
before they want to work.
And you
for
need a
anyone else.
good electronic sign to dictate.
Chris, I tried for that one year.
I don't know. I'll keep going.
So
The
I'm
mayor will have
confused
to
if we're
roll.
trying to get an order here, we're not all gonna be the same.
Let's just keep redlining everything and be fine.
So I don't
Electronic
know.
signs not my highest, sorry, Chris.
I don't know if you have to put things in order, but I like the, I can't remember who made the suggestion about that. Kind of the goal is to narrow it down to the things that we're not talking about. Not that they won't happen or they won't come up, but when we go to the budgeting phase, if we're looking at citizen services as a high priority, then now this becomes one of the things we measure every new thing against. Hey, we really want an electronic sign. That's gonna score fairly high in citizen services possibly. Does it create value to the residents? Possibly. Does it help with population growth planning? Maybe. You know what I mean? Then you can start measuring it against your top priorities. And then you end up with the monetary thing of like, well, if it's a $5,000 ask and it only meets half of the stuff, then but if it's $25,000 and it only meets one thing, then definitely no, right? I mean, it's gonna help, hopefully this will guide you in your future financial discussions.
So would then marketing, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, because that kind of ties into the commercial part, is that if we're marketing Northog, I don't know. I'm just trying to think.
It probably does, just like, where did I put economic? I wrote. Anyways, yeah, marketing. I mean, there's a lot of things that now start, you're not saying, hey, that's gonna fall in under here.
Yeah.
I mean, even this, the reason I wrote taxes, if commercial goes great, we get more property tax, more sales tax, and it actually helps with this other priority. You know, and you could argue community well-being, you know, park, trails, buy-in, I mean, all those things start cycling into those subcategories.
Well, if Barker Park doesn't hit the priority list, then that tells us something.
Well, is
Quit
that,
talking
are we
about it.
talking priority
Not
one
give
versus
it
two?
up.
Are we talking all priorities, or are we just saying this is number one and then we go to number two? Or all red ones are the priority?
I didn't understand we were
Yeah.
ranking at the current time. I thought we were just
Categorize them.
identify, prioritize, and then ranking.
I would just be curious, again, to get us away from the group think conversation from the first of the meeting. If you guys took, as a council, took these 6 things that we've underlined and then took all those things underneath it and made them subcategories of what you guys think was important, I would just be curious to see what you guys would say. Like, for me, like, an employee or creating valuable employees, residents, like, well, I think like technology, equipment updates, those things are very important to our employees, right? Like, and they can make for a very happy employee because it's like we have really great equipment. We got things that make them happy employees too. But like that might not fall on your guys' radar whatsoever. So I was just curious how some of these other things would fall under those
In the upper-
categories
in
that
the
you
upper
guys.
left-hand corner?
No.
Is that what you mean?
No, basically taking these red things, everything that's underlined and trying to find out how do each of these fall under a red category.
And
So instead of-
it was just it was just my own curiosity, because it's like, one of you guys might put under citizen services, like, that your main priority under citizen services is Barker Park, like, that is is one of the most important things to you for our citizens, and so but somebody else might have that way down at the bottom. I'd just be curious how you guys would.
Instead of Barker Park, maybe have city center or city gathering point, what, community gathering or something like that. If that's the case, then I would redline that.
But we might already have that with North Ogden Park.
Right, that's why I said slash. Yeah,
And that's what I kind of like Dave's idea is, why don't we all take the list,
and sub it together.
well, do it separately, separate exercise. Then.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it was just a, like,
but I would redline that one then. If you,
But
because
I
we need,
won't say, don't, I mean, if
Or
we're gonna do it,
maybe
just start with
redline
community
something
well-being.
more broad, like unity or
Or like
community
citizen services.
satisfaction, community satisfaction, you know, where,
Community well-being should cover it.
right, the red line community well-being, and then anything could fit into that one.
Well, and I think that's, like, in theory. Sorry, I just tainted the red with the black marker, but in theory, this is the massive umbrella
Yeah.
that incorporates all of these. So this is tier 1, community well-being. Tier 2 is the red. And then tier 3 might be green or not necessary. And to Dave's point, and maybe even to kind of expand what kind of you focused on, like, of all the things on here, when you're talking capital projects, this is the only one that's currently underlined that's capital projects. And we could spend every dime we have on roads and spend it and exhaust our funds. But I think kind of what Dave is saying is that there might be another list of capital project priorities where we say, look, we know we need to be investing in community facilities. And this is the top priority above trails, above electronic signs, above a rec center, right? And so I think that's kind of the question is, once you kind of build your top, you got your top one, community well-being, defining that in a mission statement might be a very valuable exercise, although it's also a very painful exercise. Because trying to write something that everyone buys into is not any fun. I also made Trent cry one day, because we did kind of one for the city employees, and he wanted it to be Let's Be One, which is Ben Lomond, Lemon Peak,
yeah, what was that?
Ben Lomond,
Lemon Peak? Lemon-
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Lemon Peak. The one over here,
Lewis?
Lewis
Who would
Peak,
speak? Yeah.
Lemon's further south, sorry,
I've never heard of Lemon. Peak.
Lewis,
Yeah.
anyways.
I was confused as well.
Anyways, well, the one was something else. But anyways, it's hard to write something everyone in the room agrees with when you do vision statements. That's part of the reason that we have one out there that never got printed on the signs is we went through 3 or 4 months of working on it and they never got printed out. I guess the fire station has ours.
Why don't we just input it into a chat GPT and see what it says?
Oh, boy.
Well, we got community well-being already, right?
Yeah, and I think if
That
you took
encompasses
3
everything.
big ones,
Mhm.
your 3 umbrellas, we could all probably write it right now. Seriously, you know, North Ogden desires, I'm just throwing words out there, community well-being, fiscal responsibility, and valued employees and citizens. That's it. That's a mission statement. It should be a sentence, 2 sentences max. Everything else on this list fits underneath it, all of it. And then you just prioritize and flow.
How about that one?
Chris,
Did you
put
write
one
this one?
together.
Yeah.
Or as a potential.
I was
suggestion.
just kind of screwing around, to be perfectly honest. But it's, the funny thing is that my company does this stuff with proposals. They will slap what they call a big picture together.
Mhm.
And it's kind of, I was like, that's interesting. And it's, kind of the whole proposal in one on a 1 page. And so it kind of got me thinking about what we could do. But I think the biggest part of the 3, like you said, is making sure that I don't know how to go from here, to be perfectly honest, but if we stick to the red lines, I don't know, maybe the city center thing I think would be would be a red line, but
If we're trying to pick three out of the red, I think roads and sidewalks, are we talking about like the most pristine roads and sidewalks? Or are we talking about public safety? Because public safety is already on there. So if we're picking three, then maybe it's like public safety and community
slash
well-being
roads.
and-
Well, and even, yeah, we might be getting to that point where we're not gonna be as productive. It makes, you guys are thinking I'm just like, John's dying to get out of this room. And luckily the heat's been turned down, so it's okay. Right, Ryan? Definitely warm.
You know, I'm fine.
Excellent. But I think that in these 6 items, right, because everything I feel kind of falls under the community well-being, that we can then be talking about those things, and in some ways, starting to differentiate in those categories, you know, who's in charge of what? Because this is something I feel like as a council, and it's going to feel like a critique, and I apologize for that, but sometimes when you go look at your agendas, you're getting into the weeds and you're not spending your time where it's important. And in a lot of ways, you've got Dave and the chief here, and they spend their time in the weeds. And one of the things that is a little harder on this council, though on some of the councils we've had in the past, is we've had councils where every single council member was a CEO, owned a business, or was basically super upper level management, right? And we have a very dynamic council now where a lot of everyone is more mid-management. I mean, just a different phase in everyone's career, but with that comes an inherent desire to fix problems as opposed to set policies. And I think that if we can get the council to be setting policies, then rely on the chief to fix the public safety problems. You know, someone said it earlier, hey, call the chief will fix it, right? Instead of that person calling the chief, here's the chief's number, he will fix your problem. And it's not, and please don't mean that you shouldn't be involved in the little things, because the other thing we appreciate is that your willingness to listen to residents, because they want to talk to their elected officials, and they shouldn't always be diverted. But the chief can figure out on barking dogs the right policy. The council doesn't need to write a new policy for it.
Just a quick comment. It's like the 30,000-foot view. And then Dave and I are the 10,000-foot view, and the boots on the ground are on the ground. And if you look at it that way, that's always helped me to try to organize things like that, because this is overwhelming, right? It's always helped me to become underwhelmed by distancing myself, making a general broad policy. Trust that Dave and I will ensure that the barking dog on the ground will get taken care of. So if I'm saying what you're saying, but the vision of 30,000 feet, 10,000 feet in the ground has always helped me make decisions.
And I think, John, with our department heads, I think what the council needs to understand is, look, instead of them just solving the problem, if it's a process problem, because what we tend to do is solve the immediate problem, right? But they should be looking at, you know, is there a problem in the process or in the ordinance? If that's the case, then they should be bringing that up to the council. But, you know, when somebody calls with a particular complaint, I do think it's important that the respective council member respond to them, but then work it through the department head, right? Because if they're looking at it, instead of just solving the immediate problem versus fixing the process, then they're automatically going to get back and say, hey, Chris, you know, appreciate you bringing this, because I looked into this. This is something I need you to take the council to fix. Instead of what's happening now is a citizen calls us and we're bringing it to the council and trying to solve it at that level. And what we get into primarily is solving that immediate problem versus, letting the department head work through that and say, we got a process problem here. We got a stupid ordinance here. Chris, here's my suggestion. Becomes a legislative item then, right?
And I will say that because of our history, that's part of the reason that you as a group are saddled with a bunch of process problems. And I think because, right, the executives don't fix the process. That's someone else that fixes it. And I guess, sorry, what I mean is the executive fixed the policy and not the process. And in government, it's not that way. And so what I mean is that with the skill set we have on the council now, we might be uniquely set up to fix a lot of these processes, fix the policy and the process, but not the nuances at the bottom.
But who fixes the process, John? I think that's the discussion.
So
We're-
it
Because we
depends.
don't, I'll tell you who's most, in my opinion, better equipped to fix the process or make a suggestion for those people that really understand that day-to-day activity. Not us sitting there at the council level. I mean, if we tell the chief, look, public safety is number one, and however we define that, the KPIs for defining that, then we hold him accountable for that, right? He reports back. And that's what we measure, but I think I agree with John. I think we've got down to, it's our responsibility to solve that citizen's problem. Well, and in essence, it is,
But when you say
we
we
do
do
that-
that, you're talking about us, like as in,
at the council.
okay, oh, not individual. You're
We
talking
might
about
be the
council.
mechanism to have an awareness of the problem. But it's a public safety problem. We communicate that to the chief and then expect him to report back to us. What's the fix in the process to take care of this? Is it a reporting issue? Is it an equipment, lack of equipment? It usually pops up when you start looking at fixing the process. Correct.
And there's a couple good books out there that kind of talk about this diversion from top down everything. One's called It's Your Ship. It's about Navy admiral, when he got his first boat, he just went around and talked to folks and said, well, what would make your job easier? And they swapped out every bolt in the ship to stainless steel, because even the galvanized was rusting. And so they were constantly swapping them. And when they did that, it cost 60 grand or was something for a destroyer, but that's, hundreds of thousands of bolts. Maybe I'm off on my numbers. Yeah, turning math. But
Works. It ends up
the
working.
time savings and the morale boost changed everything. And then Brian Crowell did his book. It's kind of the same thing, right? Let the people that are closest to the problem fix the problem. And
Man, the
so,
Mission and Me is another one. It's very military, but it's the pitfalls. Talks about the pitfalls of that very thing. That, at 30,000 feet, they weren't listening to the guy on the ground, and they were still going this way when they needed help over here.
Yeah.
And it's a great book.
And that's where and I apologize, but sometimes that's maybe where the council feels some frustration with me. Because, I had the opportunity to work at every level, but I ended my career at a different level. And so, that's where you might feel some frustration from me that we're getting too much into the weeds instead of the strategy, because that's where I spent the last 20 years of my career, is kind of concentrating on that. So I apologize if you feel frustrations from me, but I do believe that that's where we need to concentrate more of our efforts on the strategies. Let the team, the city team, develop the processes, obviously approved by the council, but it shouldn't be our job to try to, because what I see, and it's just my, I did get some new glasses, so I might see things differently. But I see us trying to solve the immediate problem. When people come in and they have a problem, we want to solve that particular problem instead of solving the process or changing the ordinance, or, we get into these solving one problems. When, the prime example, a couple of them is, Big O tires, right? guy illegally building the house up on the hill, I mean, the auxiliary dwelling unit up on the hill, right? We want to please our citizens, and we should be doing everything we can to create that community involvement. But there's unintended consequences a lot when we do that. Because we get into that immediate problem solving, but
Well,
you
so,
guys are the council, so I'm just expressing my paradigm.
yeah, and just, I mean, by for no specific reason, the council can by unanimous vote clip the mayor's wings a little bit if you ever want to. I'm just kidding.
And don't feel like you can't do it.
No, but I, like, and so really, if we can keep the council focused on these priorities, because I'm telling you that this is a big issue, right? Roads is a big issue that we're tackling with the upcoming transportation utility fee. Some of these others are things that we really, really want to get to. I know I'm kind of the one that forced you to sign this. More than likely, the state legislature will force your hand to make this your #1 priority, because they're gonna tie it to your sales tax dollars and your BNC road fund dollars. And they're gonna say, if you do not plan for population growth holistically for the state, not just myopically for the city, we will take away your money.
But John, when I think I mentioned the population growth planning, that entails, I understand where the state's coming from, but we as part of that, we need to be looking at how are we gonna police this growth? How are we gonna, I think I referred to it as soft infrastructure.
Yes.
As part of that, because you're right, the state's gonna have a lot to say on how it grows. I'm looking at how we're gonna support that, including, and if JD was online, he'd probably say this, because I think he's the one that brought it up, our form of government.
Did you call our police officers soft?
No, he didn't.
Well, but
Just the chief. I
So
didn't call the officers, so.
the mayor's exactly right in that, again, we keep talking about every one of these is an umbrella or a spider web, right? It's if you ever played one of those games where you try and like get the light to go through on your phone, where you like have to throw the switches the right way, and so you get the power to light the light bulb. Every single one of these things, when you pull one lever, 4 other levers are going to either disengage or re-engage. And there are so many things going on that when you talk population growth, what the state is going to make us worry about can impact the city in so many dramatic ways because of these infrastructure costs. And because of you could look at North Ogden and say, where? Because down on the flats, we're not built out by any means, but if we have to put all the density in the flats that the state may impose on us, they haven't said they're going to yet, and we don't plan for other methods to do it. And I'm just gonna put a plug in for my favorite idea on population growth. If we create very dynamic zones, so you don't just have concentrated centers of all the connected housing, it can be impactful. And I'm not talking about apartments on the hill or townhomes across everywhere. I call it the avenue zone. In the avenues of Salt Lake City, you have apartments next to single family homes, next to duplexes, next to they have a 7-Eleven.
Have a
And-
hospital.
they have a hospital. And what I'm saying is the best, this is John's opinion, sorry, carrying on my soapbox. The best neighborhood you can build are not homogeneous, because you rely on the neighbors to support their neighbors, right? If the neighbors help each other, instead of having it being a whole bunch of renters who don't know each other, and you put renters next to homeowners, you have a better chance of success. That's what the statistics are starting to tell us in land use planning.
Say that one more time. That the statistics are saying what again?
That if you mix housing types, so it's not just all R110, then you end up with the neighbors and the community groups, particularly in Utah, can be very supportive, so you don't just have one area of the city. Let's pick on Ron Claire because it's not part of our city, where you end up with everyone who doesn't have any money in one spot. And so all of the police forces down there all the time. West Haven, the sheriff spends all of their time in the apartments by the freeway
The hotels.
or at the hotels, right?
Yeah.
And so what they're saying, and I don't know that this is a fix, but if you had single family homes next to duplexes, instead of just a subdivision of duplexes and a subdivision of single family homes, you'll end up with a better community that's safer and healthier.
To expand on that, John, the mix, and this is where an issue comes up with the council. What is that mix of ownership versus renters? You gotta have a mix. You can't have all of one or, you know, you gotta figure out how to balance that,
Yep.
right? And right now with what we're seeing is it could throw us out of balance with the number of apartments or rentals, right? Nothing wrong with them. I'm just saying that you have to have that mix
Mhm.
between rent, ownership, density, non-density. It's that community creation, right?
And what every city right now is trying to build based on what Steve Waldrop and the governor are pushing, and what Nielsen Homes is doing, in theory, is they're trying to build a small ownership home that people can afford, that our kids and grandkids can afford. And in North Ogden, there is no such thing. The best thing and the closest thing we have is a townhome. Maybe not the best thing, the closest thing we have is a townhome. But the trouble with townhomes is, which is why we did what we did with Century Farms, they are so susceptible to a first-time investor to buy and hold. And it's a problem. Ogden's dealing with that. How many remember when Godfrey went in and just wiped every illegal duplex, triplex out of the city? You do.
We hated them.
Yeah. And because investors will always, not always, most investors want the highest margin, which means they buy the smallest unit and wait for time to build their income, because you can make $800 on a 1,200 square foot unit or $800 on a 2,000 square foot unit. But you can buy two 1,200 square foot units for the price you pay for the 2,000, right? Like at least in Ogden, when I bought my first house, that was the case. I did live in Ogden twice, had homes in Ogden.
Oh, I know where you.
Yeah. Anyways,
Way to
So-
survive, John, way to survive.
so it sounds like if we maybe, we'll send this list out and say, here's the red line ones. If the council would go through the exercise of combining these other things under those umbrellas, and if they don't fit, that's fine. And then at the next time we talk, we can say, okay, now of these 6, 7 items, is this the full list, or do we need to eliminate one? Do we need to add something? So that we can then use that in particularly when we talk about capital projects, new projects, and our tax policy. Most of you know that I love the little increase every year, and you hold yourself. You say, I will never do more than this, but I will always do it, right? Because I think that our department heads are dynamic enough that we can flex with it, and we can say, look, inflation went up by 10% this year, and I only get 3% or 5% or whatever the number is. We can make it work. We'll figure out how to make it work. But if we have to not grow, and then ask for 15%, I think that's hard on the residents. I think that's hard on the staff. In fact, that is what I would say, that 17 years of bad policy led to the fact that we have snowplow trucks that were 20, 25 years old, and in my opinion, unsafe. So anyways, what other thoughts? I need to sit down so that other people can talk.
To me, it seems, I don't say jumbled, but I was thinking about the chief's thought about making it higher. And I had kind of already thought about that, making, the economy or, community, as some general overall topics, and then some of those could go underneath to prioritize, but, because public safety to me doesn't necessarily equal the police department. I mean, to me, public safety would be the police department and the roads.
And the fire department.
And our relationship with the fire department.
That's a different, anyway, but,
We're just there.
and so, I don't know, I guess,
I think if you took your mission statement,
you know,
is it mission, vision, either way,
whatever it
I
was,
don't.
the sentences.
Support and maintain a safe and friendly environment, 1. Focus on fiscal responsibility, 2. While establishing business growth to relieve citizen tax burden, that goes with the fiscal responsibility. Grow a city center that connects our history to future generations. So there's your third one. So you have those 3, and then fit every one of those things underneath it,
Yeah,
categorized,
just.
or whatever you decide those top 3 are. But
whole-
that's a great start, I think, my opinion. Because they're general, right? They're really, really general. And then you get into the specifics. And then you get down more weedy, like John was talking about. And then you set policy and legislation to ensure that Dave and I and Ryan can do what we need to do to support that vision or mission.
Right, and so I was kind of thinking more along the lines of literally just saying public safety, and then the next one would be the economy, meaning i.e. tax. And then the next one would be social science / community or something. And that would be priority number 3, and then I don't know, I
Then
guess,
group things
I'm
under
fine
it.
with that.
because to me, that's more, what's that?
But I'm good with that, done.
But see, this is where you get to this very manageable 3 things. If it doesn't fall under those 3,
I just made those up.
then, most likely every single one of these things that's on the
Yeah.
board will fall under one of those 3 categories.
John, I just wanted to throw out, I think, I can't remember who made the comment, but the success of this, it means partnering with, there's other stakeholders. Like, I'll give an example, and Ryan can expound on this. When you looked at citizen well-being and public safety, I didn't even know this till I started talking with Ryan, but our emergency responders couldn't provide life-supporting techniques because they didn't have the county or the city wouldn't allow them to do that.
Certification.
No, we had the certification.
Oh.
The county wouldn't let practice.
And so,
They couldn't be paramedics.
I mean, when Ryan brought that up, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. So if I live on the northern part of the city and I have a heart attack and they can't intubate me or do whatever, I gotta wait somebody from Ogden? That's not public safety. But without Ryan and Jeremiah and the chief pushing this issue for public safety, it would have, so I think we've got to remember, as we develop these subcategories, that we have other partners in the community that we need to be cognizant with. But I think because, the new chief and Ryan and Jeremiah pushed this, I think we're getting it,
We are,
last I heard.
yeah, it's happening.
So,
Yeah.
But it's, the same price similar with sewer. If we don't keep friends with our sewer district, where's it gonna go?
And apparently out to the
What if
valley.
we-
Reverse that
it's
gate.
going west.
What if we-
Reverse that gate, send it right back.
Sorry,
reverse
I'm
it.
getting overfocused
Right.
here.
But yeah.
I
we
just
do
feel
have
like let's
big
just get it
overarching
done.
partners
Like,
too.
if we all take it home, we're all gonna come up with different answers. My opinion. But what if we expand the, what was the economy or tax or something that Chris was saying, to make it something like smart management or I don't know, so that we can include this creative value to the employees, services.
Commercial would go under there, yeah. Stuff like that reduces the
I
fiscal.
think fiscal responsibility, right?
Fiscal.
Fiscal responsibility, public safety, fiscal responsibility, and some kind of like
And,
community,
yeah,
Cultural something, yeah.
What if we
Community,
just put community and then we can go?
Yeah.
from there?
community unity, the one that's down there maybe.
Community unity.
You're welcome.
John, I'm still back to this and I might just be missing this. I don't know where it fits in. But nothing up there is gonna be accomplished without having the right employees, without being, I keep using this term, a preferred workplace. It's just not gonna happen. If we don't have satisfied officers and good leadership, I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we, and I just don't wanna leave that employee off as a high priority. Wherever it's incorporated,
It's-
I'm
it's-
fine.
it's kind of the management. If fiscal, to me, and employees kind of fit in this like smart management type of,
agree, yeah.
I don't know, it's too, it's, I don't have. the
Cause,
word.
cause your department heads are in charge of, providing a budget year to year, right? And it's not up to anybody else. And so, but if we as policymakers put in the fiscal bucket that employee retention is key, then they understand that when they're making their budget that making
I
sense.
don't have the words.
Well, let's start with the mayor's suggestion if we're gonna pound through it and look at these four. Because we can always later say, hey, we should pull employees up to here or up to here, or employees actually might fall under all three.
Yeah,
I think we
Right.
employ fiscal into employees because I think we'd be cognizant of the message we're gonna send to our employees. If it's a subcategory of fiscal, then what we're saying is,
Fiscal above.
You're only important. if
so
we can afford you.
I don't know where it belongs, John, and I'm not trying to delay this. I'm just saying we cannot bury employee satisfaction anywhere in this, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because we send a subtle message, right? To the team.
Well, and one thing so let's stick with the four for this exercise. And we're just gonna go down, and I just need to know what color to mark by it. Right? Do we want a black line, a green line, an orange line, or a red line? Okay? And I think we're kind of accepted that this is kind of the overarching everything. So what about commercial? Where does that go?
green,
Green.
Okay? What about senior center?
orange.
And if you disagree, say, do your own internal taboo buzzer, external.
You're
taboo
making
buzzer.
fun of me, John?
Roads,
Black,
Black.
orange,
Park orange, trails,
orange,
marketing,
fiscal, green.
everyone agree?
So is this like marketing to other cities about like
This was marketing our city.
marketing North Ogden to other people in Utah to come spend money here, that kind of thing?
Or say,
Or
look at the cool trails we
build.
have, yeah, something,
Or move here, yeah.
commercial, yeah,
So it could be to the commercial or.
commercial or
citizens.
orange.
That commercial development has to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Okay, communication and unity,
That might be orange.
Yeah,
buy into community,
yep, orange.
And
public
green.
safety,
And green, yeah.
Green.
Buy into community, green too.
Yeah, I think so, because if we buy in, if we have the community's buy-in and it supports commercial coming in or businesses or like our brand, right?
Brand, that's the-
Our branding, North Ogden, freaking spend your money, whatever it is, right?
well, spend local. shop
Spend local, shop local, whatever we do, don't say still untamed.
John, when you look at
Is that Rogers?
roads
Yeah.
and sidewalks, we have that under public safety. But I think that also has something to do with fiscal responsibility, right? And it's not the saving, it's fiscal responsibility means we're willing to spend money to do the right thing.
Well, that goes for all of them then.
Yeah, I think that goes with all of them.
But if you put,
So should we eliminate fiscal as a category?
I'd make it economy or something like that, because then, because you're talking about taxes, or just say, you could just make,
Monetary policy.
yeah,
I guess under definition of fiscal and monetary policy, whatever it is, it's two-pronged. It's willing to spend money where we need to and avoiding ourselves of spending money where we don't need to. Because it's hard to make that decision either way, right? To say yes sometimes as hard as it is to say no. But we have to say no on some things to be fiscally responsible. But yes, to be fiscally.
I wonder if that's like an
responsible.
adjective of how we do these three. We're going to be responsible in how we do public safety, community unity, and take care of our employees and
What did-
residents.
Blake, what did you say? Monetary?
I just said monetary policy. Technically, you guys, we could probably.
Jerome,
We could probably put a lot of these under a couple different categories.
is that you,
Mhm.
Jerome?
Huh?
Is that you,
He's my uncle.
Jerome Powell? Military policy.
He's my mom's brother.
Huh.
I've been trying to influence it, but
I think he's got somebody just elected that thinks he's gonna influence him.
let's hope not.
Okay, what about citizen engagement?
Orange, yeah.
Population growth?
Yeah, if we change that fiscal to something like administration or management or something. I wonder if that would,
Management, I like where you're going, let me see. Management,
Well, we always talk about, it seems like whenever you're talking about like subdivisions and growth, you always hear the term smart growth, right?
maybe.
It's about accountability. Fiscal accountability.
What do you say,
Oh, I like this one.
fiscal growth,
Management
no,
or something.
I like that. I like accountability because it doesn't, yeah.
or you could say smart growth.
You know, if we have 22 subdivisions that came out in 2024.
So you would say this population growth probably more under the green category?
Mhm.
Okay, technology?
Right.
Well, we're orange.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like-
This really might,
It's all of it, because, you know, you look at SEPTED, you can
Yeah.
get the technology to make sure everything looks nice and is protected at the same time.
So it's
All of it, it's unity, it's all of
The
it.
flock system.
Or, yeah,
okay,
lighting.
facility maintenance?
Employees, public safety. All of them? Crap.
that's safety.
Fiscal, I think it's
Safety.
green fiscal accountability. Because that means if you're accountable, you're setting aside a money to maintain those. If you're fiscally accountable.
Which supports safety as well, safety all around roads.
Okay, cherry days?
Orange.
Equipment updates, I think we same as
Green
facility
one,
management.
I'd say red too, wouldn't you?
yeah.
Agree.
And black.
And black, red, black, green. Or,
Everything but orange?
yeah, everything's but orange. Well, what about the parks? Okay, yeah, it'd be all of them. Like the jungle gym equipment.
Okay, pool?
Oh, boy. Yeah,
Orange and green.
yeah, I'd say
Red.
green too.
Well, we're gonna be accountable with everything, right? I mean.
I think maybe, is there a way we can expand that green to include planning? It says smart growth, but when it comes down to green for the pool, I think that's gonna take a lot of planning, because my question is, where's the next 5 million coming from?
Yeah, responsibility.
Where's the next 5 million came from?
Yeah, in 20 years, another 5 million.
15 years, maybe even.
Say 20 years, it'll be 10 million.
Okay, green waste?
Gotta be green.
Orange.
Let's change it to the orange waste.
Orange?
I don't know.
I think the community appreciates that.
I would say
Okay, brings people together.
this probably, it saves us some money, but it probably creates a community feel. Meaning that you're not undermining the community morale by keeping it around, except for when we burn.
Well, it is fiscal planning too, because we're saving money doing it.
Okay, citizen services,
Red and orange.
Is it, are we talking like snow plows? Cause that's safety, but
It's true.
So would be safety too if we didn't have one. It'd be
that's
unsafe.
so true, Black.
I don't know.
top tier workplace, I'm assuming red. Although the hard thing is like, we just keep finding that maybe the main goal of a top tier workplace is to lead to good employees.
That's
So
also-
leading to good employees helps you with fiscal,
Fiscal, yeah.
community, and public safety. So it's hard because everything kind of, they're inherently intertwined, right? Value to employees and residents. Red and orange. Dog park,
John,
Orange.
yeah.
I just have another question. I'm sorry, but I think we're getting into, not everything on there is strategy. And what we're saying is we're gonna get ourselves into the weeds when we start talking about some of those. You know, I think we've got a lot of tactics on that board versus strategies, and if we're gonna start calling them strategies, because that's what we're talking about here, right? Did I miss that? We're trying to elevate ourselves to concentrate on strategic issues? I'm just asking the question.
No, I mean, my goal was to create priorities, which I feel like we've kind of done. And I think the council, what I got was they desired to kind of find out how everything fit into those priorities to make sure we weren't missing a priority.
You know,
But you're right, that some of these are,
and I'm not picking on you, Chris, but when we get down.
I
to
know when
dog-
you're like trying to
we
skip
get
it
down
before
to
we get to
dog
the.
park and get to the
Distraction.
electric
Yeah, it
sign.
is. I see how it goes.
But, you know, it used to be when in a priority cycle, you'd look at the what, the why, and the how, right? And I don't think it's the council's job to get into the how,
Agreed.
it's the why and the what, right? Leave the how up to those who know how the how is.
you might be able to, you could possibly just, now the orange is dying.
Because otherwise I'd put on their community garden.
Well, and I was almost just gonna say that essentially what we're talking about is, no, that is not, and I can't write like this, but this is essentially community facilities, right? These, so. Yes. Does everyone feel good about the way, I mean, we can hop things around, right? I mean, this is more about just making sure that we haven't, there's not a fifth priority here, or as we've kind of talked about, green kind of ends up being the second in so many of these. It's the first in several. But maybe there's an idea that maybe this green is this, it needs to be split apart into, it's an overriding principle as well as there's a green component in every one of these, because I know how to make all the employees the happiest employees in the world. We just can't do it. Free healthcare, double their salaries. But that's only good for 15 days. Once people get a raise, it only lasts, that high only lasts for 15 days, but you know.
Double
so
it, no.
They only have
15
days.
So John, just to clarify my thinking, for instance, let's just take fiscal.
Okay.
To me, the council needs to develop, I mean, that's a title, but what is the strategy for fiscal responsibility? What does that mean?
The strategic part, you mean?
Yeah, what's the strategy? That's a title to me, but what's the strategy? It seems like the strategy is we're gonna be fiscally conservative while having a willingness to spend money to support A, B, C, D. Because as soon as we say we're fiscally conservative, you know what that's gonna be interpreted to be? You're never increasing property taxes on me.
Well, then say fiscally responsible.
Yeah, but you know what, to me, the definition of fiscal responsible is being willing to spend money where you have to spend money and not spending money where you shouldn't. But to the general citizen, when you talk about fiscal responsibility, that's like, don't spend any of my money.
Yeah.
Do not increase my property taxes.
I
You
wonder,
thieves.
I wonder if what we're all saying
fill my pond.
isn't fiscal, it's more of a planning, it's a future thinking. Because future thinking, we can't spend $1 million of every citizen's money, we don't have that much money. But planning also means we do need to spend money, so it's,
Somebody who is anti-tax is gonna look at that and go, you said you were gonna be fiscally responsible. Everybody else is gonna
right,
go.
we need to change the wording.
See, I think the council was fiscally responsible 4 years ago when they increased property taxes 23%. The reason I'm saying that is because we identified all these things that had to be caught up and taken care of. And we would have been not fiscally responsible had we not addressed those issues, because 5 years from now, it would have cost them twice as much. So we were fiscally responsible by doing that.
And we had
I like that, John.
privilege,
Thank you. The big C.
the big C.
So that, I'm just wondering how we send that message. is all
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying.
like this economic planning, that seems like a good.
And I kind of restated what the mayor said, we kind of hit on it so many times, is this fiscal thing bleeds through these categories in a way that we are not, same thing, police officers, not Golden, Colorado, but there's a city in Colorado that they pay more than any other city by $20,000 or $30,000 a year. And they only hire if you have a bachelor's in criminal science, and they have a waiting list all the time. So, yes,
Could we change that to fiscally responsible instead of conservative?
sure.
Because I'm telling you, as soon as we start, the definition of conservative is we're not spending any money. We're figuring a way to reduce property taxes, right? Which would be nice, but I just don't know how to do that.
Cutting services.
Okay.
Okay, put on there, Councilmember Watson wants to cut services.
No,
Wow.
Yeah,
We
with
don't
priority
want to,
number
that's
E,
exactly-
cutting services. But, because I think, these 4 categories, this is my feeling, is these are not feeling as overlapping as some of the other stuff we were doing before. And like this economic planning, planning for our water system is gonna come into that, right?
Planning for growth.
Planning for growth is coming into that. Equipment updates and equipment and facility maintenance is coming into that, because if we don't look at that, oh, it's not up here anymore, but if we're not looking at that 5-year, what's due to be replaced, then we're not planning, and then we have to pay $450,000 to update our parking lots. Because we kept kicking the can down the road. We're trying to stop doing that, so. Now, I'm gonna tell you, this is John's 3rd rule of meetings. We either need to have a break, because we've been here for 2.5, 3 hours without moving, or be done. So it's totally up to the council what option.
Well, I wonder if there is a way that we can go back to your spreadsheet and just spend 10 minutes, because I feel like we kind of opened that up and then we got off on a tangent so that we could solve that again. I don't know. Is that impossible?
Well, so
It'll be a lot.
I
Okay,
can, well, so.
all right, sorry. Mark.
Well, so, but on that, but now, okay, without going to the spreadsheet. Let's write down without going to the spreadsheet, because you all remember your goals. What are the projects that need to happen? And I'm gonna say by 2031, not in 2031. What are those capital projects that need to be on our radar?
Community pond.
Community pond, well, so,
That's already on there. So,
but no,
Yeah.
still, there's some stuff there. Let's,
because that goes under the development, community, commercial, all that stuff.
pond, okay, what else?
Oh, you're so nice.
Park and park?
Park,
All the way done?
No, I didn't say
Okay.
that.
money spent. Because that's what we do with capital, we buy big stuff.
The community pond you're referring to.
Well, yeah, getting that,
So those gotta
that's
move.
commercial.
Oh, I got one over here, thank you.
So are you
Ince-
including the 6.6 acres down there? now?
Yes, that's the community pond.
So but that's incentive, to get commercial faster, incentivizing developer, I don't know what, That's probably RDA money, that's not necessarily capital.
And there, and already, and the, well, CDA money, which
CDA,
is
sorry.
problematic, right? Cause
Yes.
it's way more strings tied to CDA money.
Yeah.
What,
Um,
Dave, what else? I'm asking you, so you wake up. I'm just kidding. You're not asleep. You're not asleep, everybody, I promise. What's a big thing? Everything, not even just general fund,
Water upgrades.
water upgrades. And I'm gonna include wells. We've got to develop some wells. I mean, we've got some that they haven't been developed. They've been drilled, but haven't been developed. What are the other big things that
Oh,
need to be on the consideration list for 2031?
what's that? I guess that's under the water, the upgrading the meter readers. That's underwater. That's not under capital, right?
He's saying anything.
Anything?
Oh, yeah, so the upgrade to the water.
Water meters.
Yeah.
And we had the park
Are you not
playgrounds.
talking about capital?
That was under that.
Playgrounds.
$200,000.
So continuing our playground.
We are.
I will say, and this is really good, that the playground that is due to be replaced in 2030 is the west playground at North Ogden Park.
Correct.
Which is a playground that was built or put in place in 2015. So we are getting onto our 15-year schedule, which is our goal. Which means that we will start getting to a point where some years we won't have to replace a playground because everything will be 15 years or newer, as opposed to 25 and 30 years, which is some that are just about to go.
The trail ways and means, what was the title?
Wayfinding.
Wayfinding. That goes to marketing
So-
or something. I don't know.
The only reason I'm not gonna include that one is it probably doesn't qualify as a capital expense because
Okay.
it's not high enough.
Yeah.
But it needs to be on the radar. So save that for another. Any other projects?
I don't know if marketing that would be high enough.
No, probably not. Mountain Road,
Yep.
gonna be a major expense.
That road meaning,
Connecting it from there all the way up to Skyline in Pleasant View. The county gave us that money to start buying some right of way.
Are we going any farther north on Washington? Double lanes?
That,
Past,
that's actually on it for 26.
no, I know, but
Oh.
any going
He's
farther
saying
north?
widening beyond 3100.
So
Because it's wide enough once you get to a certain spot, right at 33 or, yeah, 30.
it'll be 32 is about what it'll be widened to. I'll tell you my impression. Yes, needs to be done. No way we can afford it. Because when we go wide, we're gonna have to take out every house on one side of the road and at a $500,000 plus a house, we're not gonna be able to do it. So there's gotta be another way. And this is what I think you're saying. Monroe.
Okay, that was.
We
my
need
next
another north-south route, or figure out a way to get Pleasant View's road connected down to 89 that they have planned.
For Mountain Road.
There might be a strategic goal by our city to work with WACOG and WFRC to say, no, this is a priority for us, even though it's not in our city.
But I swear I saw it in Mountain View or Pleasant View's plan.
It is,
They're working on it.
yeah, it is, yeah.
But for Mountain Road, I mean, we're not even close.
Yeah, we are.
Really? To connect it? I thought. there was a couple-
So it does connect for one quick corner. So now the ambulances can come straight into North Ogden City from up there on 4,300, 4,200.
43. It's getting
But
closer.
and then the east side of that on Northview Phase 9, that's ready.
Yeah, I saw. it.
And Northview 10 is the next one. I think you're gonna be,
But the one by Eric Thomas's house, that's the problem, and that with a steep connection to the.
there's gonna be some issues with some of those. Where I think, this is just my impression for these two roads, the city might have to invest in the actual infrastructure. And then do a holding strip so that people can't tie into the utilities without paying for their portion. But there's a certain point. In full disclosure, I live next to this, and I'm in no way saying the city should develop it next to my house for two reasons. One, I don't want it there. And two, it will financially benefit me when it goes in. Because I'll be able to subdivide my house without paying for the road, which is why we should put in holding strips and force the neighbor to buy into it if they're gonna subdivide. So trying to be fair, even though I'd love the city to build me a road so I don't have to build it, but I actually really don't want you to, so stay out of my backyard.
Well, that was
Mine's my-
near my house, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, and
That's right. Yeah.
you know, and some of them, you know, this is a question, does Fruitland or Mountain Road South, do we need to worry about those?
It's on the list, I thought.
Definitely.
Oh, well, we
Well,
haven't
Kermit-
added it, right? It's not on there, the
The
2100
1700 is what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, Fruitland's.
No,
and 20, but 21,
21 North in Fruitland was.
is it on the list, Dave,
thought so.
or is it?
It was, yeah, we was
Okay,
taken
it
back
is.
off of it.
Okay,
Taking back on.
Sounds like you need a utility
a what?
transportation fee.
We do need a
Sounds like-
transportation utility fee, I think. Unfortunately, we shouldn't call it a tax because that's how the courts ruled in the city favor. But to the mayor's point earlier, the fee is a tax because it comes out of the residents' pocket.
Well, and let me just throw this out. It kind of got mixed up when the council passed a thing, all property tax went to public safety. But you'll recall, we discontinued the transportation utility fee and we moved it over to a tax. That should have been set aside for roads. Because all we were saying is, it's a tax, but we can't give up our roads, but it got washed away.
So here's a fun nuance in city, right? We did that before the council passed the resolution that said all property tax goes to public safety. So they might have overrid themselves by so that, to the mayor's point, we had this plan to send it to roads. And now the city council made a new policy that said it all goes to public safety. So it's this weird.
Money.
So what we should do is reduce property tax by that amount, put it back over the transportation utility fee.
Potentially. It's a great discussion point for the 5 decision makers in the room and online, JD.
Does anybody watch The Voice?
No.
In here?
Used to.
Well, Snoop's on there, and
Oh, boy.
you know how they always consult and they say, well, what would you do, Snoop? And he says, well, if I was making this decision, I would, well, then he goes, but I'm not making the decision. That's me.
Okay, and this, again, this is 2031 projects or, you know, stuff that is gonna be added to the list.
John, if this is 3031, I don't think Community Pond can wait till 3031.
No, this is
No, this is all.
done by 3031.
2031.
Well,
2031.
So
33, it will be done by then
the
too.
hard thing about this is technically on the list already, which means if it's not done, it'll keep carrying forward. But we're just trying to get stuff on the board to talk
How
about.
about 1700 North? Like putting all those sidewalks and crap in.
1700.
I know, because they're doing some road stuff too, right?
We're doing water line.
What am I?
Okay. I mean,
Is that the
we've got
intersection or is
Barker
that-
Park. Does anyone remember our commitment to the county? It's 10 years on the
Oh, the new one?
new
Park.
property, right?
Did they buy off on 10? wanted
I haven't
five.
heard back. They might have been trying to reach out to Scott. I'm just gonna call it the Hill Park right now. But that probably needs to be on our radar.
A few of you guys have mentioned trailhead upgrades. I don't know if you guys want to put.
I tried to put that on there. He said he wouldn't let me.
Oh, I thought you said,
Well, the signs, but the trailhead, I mean, the
oh, the
upgrades
actual
themselves.
trailhead. Sorry, that's my fault.
But does it not include trails then? Yeah,
I could.
let's pave it. We had unlimited money, right?
And some of them are these specific projects that we know the names to. Some of them are these more, hey, we wanna make connections. I mean, with trails is gonna come in this conversation with, we're working with the Department of Natural Resources to get them to agree that technically we can have it be a public trail on top of the canal pipe. They're not gonna probably let us do it where the canal's open, but technically right now, they really don't want it on the canal pipe, which is, it's hard for residents to understand, and that's why they're not enforcing it. Selective enforcement, right, Mayor?
just remember saying to Pine View, if you're gonna enforce it, we're gonna make it very clear it's not us taking the trail away.
Pine View has
You
closed
guys.
this. I wish, this is, I kind of wish I could go by department heads and be like, anything capital you need, but do we need a big basin anywhere, Dave, for storm?
Fixing the North Ogden stands,
Oh, the grandstand?
grandstands, I know that's not really talked about, but it's something I know needs to happen.
It was talked about a little bit, not
Mhm.
tonight, but I mean, one thought was to try and get it on the National Register of Historic Places because of how old it is, and then that might qualify us for some grant funding. Okay, so we could take this list and any more that you feel like you need to add, because we've hit Christina's 10 minutes. And we can start adding it to that list for 2031. And knowing, council, that those things can be scooted up. Barker Park can be scooted up. Mountain Road could be, you know, they can all be shifted forward in the scheme as we do our annual planning. We're just trying to get them on the list because right here, we've got a 20-year plan. When you start looking at all of these type of projects, knowing that we're going to be adding more in each year and potentially taking some off. But more likely than not, just adding to. Sorry, I'm gonna add the enormous elephant outside of this room on this list. 2600 North will be the most expensive road project we ever do, unless we can find a more creative way to do it. Because we will take 20 houses. And not.
Double lane both ways, is what you're saying.
Double lane both ways is what it's supposed to be. So that will be pending $10 to $15 million of property acquisition.
It's more expensive than going to 3,300.
Yeah. Going to 3,300 right now would be almost $5 million of property acquisition, and we got it for 2.5.
On
It wasn't even,
On 450, yeah.
it wasn't even 2.5, I
Yeah.
don't think.
So when we're talking roads, we're gonna be talking level of service, just as a teaser for that conversation. Level of service means how long does someone have to wait at an intersection to get through? The current goal is 1 cycle of the light. That likely will not be possible. However, strategically, you could widen your intersection to 3 lanes both ways and then shrink it back down to 1. Not great. The engineers will not love it. But if you can stack people, that's what we're doing at 3,100. We're widening out right at the intersection as people come down the hill so we can get a bunch of people through the light as opposed to having them sit in 1 lane and they can't make it through. It's a fix that helps, but it's not a cure. Okay, what other thoughts? We're all here together and I don't want to just kick everyone out of the room. So what else do we need to discuss?
That was just one thing I was curious about. Can we actually, I don't know if it would be an ordinance or have some kind of a statute or something where every year it can just kind of be built into the budget to have some kind of an adjustment in property taxes so that you always have it?
You're talking about 3%.
I'm on board.
Well,
That's what he was saying.
but is that a,
You can't really put it in an ordinance because the council can change the ordinance. But if new council members come in, understand that, hey, this is the policy, then it's more likely to continue than not.
so we can kind of set a precedent that becomes policy that every year we ought to be looking at least a 3 to 4% increase on.
Or you could tack it to inflation or something.
You could tag it to a number, and I would do it as a max, because you might have inflation that's only 2%, and then we should say, okay, only 2%.
So can that be something, how do we proceed with something like that? You just,
We need to put that discussion on the agenda.
Board market green.
I feel like a little bird has just put it on the agenda. Right, little mouse, who's the one that's always listening in the corner? Mouse is listening. Bird?
PETA,
I thought you were talking
a
about
little
me.
PETA.
You mean add it to next week's? agenda?
No, put it, but on an agenda, add it to our agenda follow-up. And just so council knows, we've been checking that agenda follow-up list, trying to bring stuff back. A lot of things have actually been checked off the list, but there's still a few things that we need to bring back for you all. One plug that I need for you is, remember, Tuesday, we're talking RDA. So come with your lists, talk about if you think there's a max percentage the city should participate on projects, a max dollar we should participate, and then what you think priority wise might be the best projects. Understanding that there may be enough money to do everybody if we do tight enough parameters, but that still might not be the best use of your city money, because there may be other stuff that has popped up on the radar that may be worth talking about.
Does that, so you said you were gonna put together some kind of fluid spreadsheet, right, that we could move the numbers around? Am I making that up in my head? Sorry. I
No,
have
you
that.
are not making that up. Okay.
I wonder if we could have that tool before the meeting so
Yep.
that we can, I don't know, it would help me be more prepared.
Yeah, I can send it over to you
That would be awesome.
when I get it done.
I was just gonna say
I'll just
one
give it to
final
you.
thought. I would love it if the community pond in the Barker Park on this capital
Ignore the
project
crap on the
list
back. It's just-
were,
It was my running.
began sooner
Working
rather
plan.
than later. The more that we push these big ones down, I mean, I don't know.
Well, and that's
They're
once,
too
They're gonna
far.
be for community pond decision probably needs to be made in the next couple of months.
yeah, once things get up on that spreadsheet, shifting them forward and backward a year is all a discussion about that bottom line,
Yeah.
that bottom number.
Yeah.
And so if we can do it, I would anticipate, just in conversations that we're having now, that Barker Park is likely going to be started before 2031. And there will be partnerships and resources that have come up. As an example, and not to sway anyone, but if we did soccer fields, the folks who run SWAT have a donor / sponsor who will build the soccer field for free if we give them the ground. Not give them the ground, we allow them to put a soccer field on it. And I think that includes possibly the parking lot,
Holy cow.
because the
Do it
soccer
tomorrow.
has massive money behind it, and there are more kids that play soccer than play all of our sports combined. Which is part of the reason we never wanted to take it over, because what a massive headache. So,
There's actually a citizen who's approached me about, he and his company actually put together a park back in like Alabama or something like that. And it had like 10 soccer fields, and so I think there could be some people even more here that would be interested too, you know. Just gotta get that design.
That's the key.
The design is done.
Yep, just gotta get that.
Yeah.
We met his 45-day challenge. We just need to know which plan to bring to the council. And
We're
one,
waiting on the burgers for that.
no,
yeah,
yeah, that's true.
because if the Barkers say, no, that was never our intention and we don't want that, then we bring plan without soccer, right? Then the council says, is this worth doing
So, yes.
without soccer? Because we want to draw people to the thing, but I just want to emphasize, Eric made his thing. But John, correct me, I mean, it is contingent on which plan we bring,
Correct.
on what the Barker family says is okay with. Because their whole thing was to make this a legacy for the city, right? I think they're recognizing that having just trails and tall weeds and stuff isn't probably gonna be a legacy for the city.
Yeah.
So I do have a meeting with them on the 15th. With the other side of the Barker family.
Cool.
Can I bring up one thing too? Just, I'm so sorry. Is everybody gonna go like, be quiet? Well, I've been thinking about what I'm gonna bring up, right? Well, something you said earlier led me to believe that now Ryan Forsyth is the one that's looking at the development of it.
He's the
right?
one under contract with the city for the commercial part of the pond.
And you said something that led me to believe that is his due diligence based on like Pine View and their commitment?
No, what the mayor made very clear, and it makes it sound like it's only 100% super glad the mayor told Ryan, we will not move our pond and spend that money until we know that he has a tenant who's signed and actually coming.
Okay.
Because right now, commercial it's hard to tie them down, and they change and pivot. The 7-Eleven, right? They were gung ho, and all of a sudden, nothing. They pulled out at the project on it. So we
Sorry.
just want it locked down before we commit ourselves to spending $4.6 million.
I was gonna say, because if that was that would be really, really loose to have that many, subject to Pine View, subject to.
Is the tenant gonna be deterred though, that the pond is still there?
No,
Okay.
they're all sophisticated national tenants are who he's talking to.
Oh, okay.
So
That's why I said, bring to us a delivery date for a specific client with due diligence, with,
Signed contract.
nothing's 100% until it's,
But at least when you're past the due diligence stage,
yeah.
it's a little bit more for sure.
But, in discussions with him, I think we could move forward a little bit quicker because he's willing to excavate, which is about $1.7 million of the cost. So then he's got skin in the game, right? If he's got it excavated and spend $1.7 million, that makes it easier for us to move quicker because we don't have to come out of pocket, right?
Do we have heard anything more about some of the, remember when who was it that came in?
It was him.
It was Ryan, wasn't it?
nothing official.
Nothing official thing.
I think he's got plans submitted for the one building. Right?
And those are the ones he talked about, which is
Wingstop, Jersey Mike's,
And
and
Pilates now.
and Pilates.
No, seriously.
And Pilates, those three.
Pilates thing.
Well, no, but and this is what it means, like, it all spins, right? And so, but a Pilates studio is a great addition to the city.
Then, he's getting the other piece over by Cafe Rio and the other hard corner.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're, in theory, let's just call it 5 years, that should be all built out.
The restaurant never
I
panned out.
personally think
Well,
Potentially.
there is a restaurant, but they haven't committed to a point where he could even say who he's even courting. So it's one of those things where it's this weird, like, the trouble is in the commercial industry, if a competitor, let's use AutoZone and O'Reilly's because they're both here, they always are close to each other. If you find an O'Reilly's, you'll find an AutoZone within a half mile, right?
Or next to each other.
Or next to each other.
Or America First and a Mountain America.
Yeah. And so if AutoZone heard, let's say AutoZone was a restaurant and they heard that O'Reilly's was looking in North Ogden, then they might try and take the property so they can have the better spot. And that happens, like sometimes the credit unions do to each other. So.
And there is, Chris, you'll like this. There is,
Digital sign coming.
the sign's not coming, but the digital sign company. is coming.
Just have them sponsor the sign.
No. And there is some interest being shown in the 1700 to 1900 commercial property there.
On the west side.
And so, the city's
The
gonna
east
have,
side'd be nice too.
council's gonna have to decide if they're stuck on the gateway building or not. But there is interest there for a gas station and some commercial development to the north.
So when we can put the North Ogden sign ready where North Ogden starts, as opposed to.
Cooper, it's in the Cooperstown
Is it?
agreement.
Oh.
That they're like, we're supposed to pay for it, but they're giving us $5,400 towards it, which of course now, that's what the sign was then, now it's gonna be more. And then they're in perpetuity gonna have their electrical pay for the lights on it, so,
Then we just gotta move the sign from across the
yeah, the
Turf-
Kiwanis sign
the
might,
turf field.
the Kiwanis sign might go away once the permanent one's up.
I just meant the grass farm one is.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
yeah,
other
yeah.
side.
Yeah,
So now
yeah,
it's gone,
that's
or
true.
it's still-
And what's the time limit on political signs? I thought that was like 5 days or something. isn't it?
5 or 10 days after.
You should call code enforcement.
I know, I should.
Yeah, she's in Hawaii.
I know.
Chief will pick them up on the way home.
I'll start yelling at some of the people I know.
That's the truth.
Chop, chop.
Okay.
It was a good meeting.
Yes, it was.
And the food was
What's
awesome,
going
thanks.
on over by,
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Lowe's And
A bank.
another bank.
Bank of America.
Yep. Bank likes to be near where the people with money are. Ironically, title loan businesses also like to be near North Ogden, but they always they don't go out of business. They find that the locations are not utilized.
What was it, title company?
Title companies.
Oh, title company.
Title loan companies, yeah. I think because there's a lot of people who use them in our city, but they don't go to ones near their house. Because everyone drives past them and knows who's there.
Yeah, I think Stewart titles. been for longer than
No, it's
title.
like,
Yeah.
not that type of title.
Yeah.
Talk about the
Your
loan,
car
the
title
loan
loan.
place.
Oh, you're.
Title
talking- oh, I
loans,
thought you
Yes,
said-
yes.
Payday loans, title loans, yeah.
I thought you said title insurance. So what they're talking about is
Thank you for all of this.
Yeah,
gas
I-
station and the configuration of
I think
storage for-
we probably ought to have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn. Sorry, I just said it.
Oh, on
I
that,
can say
that
it
corner.
again.
on the corner, and then it's got-
I need to get
Tree
all this
building,
stuff.
yeah,
Just
building.
over my groceries.
On the very border. it just gives a-
Oh, this is John Taylor too.
Oh, okay.
It was a good exercise today, John. Good exercise.
Thanks to everyone for coming.
Yeah.
And they approached me and said, "Is there any interest?" I said, "Talk to John."
I think Ryan needs an official motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Mom made this.
See ya.